Chapter 744. A few hours later, Zhao Feng once again arrived at the 18 Corners pirate sacred land. He didn't hide his king's aura. As he flew, his wings created a scarlet golden storm that was hundreds of yards wide. The elite pirates in the 18 Corners pirate sacred land were stunned by Zhao Feng's aura. Some of the experts even recognized Zhao Feng's identity. Zhao Feng's wings flapped as he landed on a pirate king's ship. Zhao Feng, it's you? That pirate king was a new face, a bald-headed king who looked to be in his 30s. Zhao Feng didn't recognize him, but this bald-headed king recognized Zhao Feng. In the Pirate Emperor Inheritance Sacred Land, he had personally witnessed Zhao Feng's display of divine might, directly influencing the throne of the Pirate Emperor. Where is the Cold Moon Emperor? Although Zhao Feng didn't recognize this pirate king, that didn't stop him from asking about the Cold Moon Emperor. The bald-headed king's heart shook when he sensed the grand aura coming from Zhao Feng, and he replied respectfully. Zhao Feng flew in a certain direction with the bald-headed king's guidance. An hour later, Zhao Feng approached a large fortress that was made up of several legendary pirate ships. It was like a small island, and one could see trees and buildings on it. After the new pirate emperor was born, the pirate sacred land teamed up to create this fortress, and it was called the Pirate Imperial Court. The ruler of the Pirate Imperial Court was obviously the new pirate emperor, the Cold Moon Emperor. Zhao Feng's arrival caused the Pirate Imperial Court to become chaotic. It wasn't just the grand aura coming from him that surpassed kings. More importantly, many of the upper echelon of the pirates recognized him. Zhao Feng was soon received by several pirate kings, including the golden-haired male and the bearded middle-aged man. Zhao Feng, you actually have the time to come to the Pirate Imperial Court as a guest? A clear and valiant voice sounded. Within a wave of emperor's might, a silver-robed woman with flawless icy beauty appeared in front of Zhao Feng. She had a perfect figure, and she had a sword and saber on her back and a crown on her head. The Cold Moon Emperor looked at Zhao Feng with a smile that wasn't a smile. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Zhao Feng suggested talking to the Cold Moon Emperor alone. This action caused some pirates to look at him with ambiguous or jealous gazes. The enviable thing was that the Cold Moon Emperor agreed without hesitation. On top of that, the Cold Moon Emperor, who usually didn't smile, smiled after seeing Zhao Feng. Swoosh! Zhao Feng turned into a gust of wind as he soared into the sky with the will of an emperor. Great monarch will! The upper echelon of the Pirate Imperial Court exclaimed in shock, all of them dumbfounded. The Cold Moon Emperor was surprised, but there was a hint of joy in her eyes. She had to admit that Zhao Feng's growth was faster than she had imagined. No wonder this man wasn't even tempted by the throne of the Pirate Emperor. A while later, Zhao Feng and the Cold Moon Emperor floated in the air. Even normal kings wouldn't be able to withstand the scorching sun of the immemorial Golden Crow for long. Zhao Feng, you didn't come here just to be a guest, right? The Cold Moon Emperor said. In her mind, Zhao Feng was a cultivation maniac and wasn't interested in worldly battles. Zhao Feng didn't hesitate and told her why he was here. During this process, the Cold Moon Emperor's face would be filled with shock and she would exclaim. It wasn't just the Emperor of Death's fame, but also the fact that Zhao Feng was able to survive for so long and even fight the Emperor of Death head-on. If it wasn't for the fact that I ran fast, I would have died long ago. But now that our strength has grown, we might be able to beat the Emperor of Death. Battle intent started to burn in Zhao Feng's eyes. That battle intent contained a torrential rage that was stifled to the extreme. After being chased for 6 or 7 years, Zhao Feng had never felt such humiliation ever since he started cultivating. Zhao Feng, I owe you a favor. I'll help you with all my strength. Although I can't guarantee victory, I believe it won't be hard for me to protect myself. The Cold Moon Emperor said decisively. In the past, if it wasn't for Zhao Feng's help, she wouldn't have been able to become the Pirate Emperor and become an emperor. The Cold Moon Emperor's tone was filled with confidence. Zhao Feng knew that the Cold Moon Emperor was the new Pirate Emperor and was protected by the Pirate Sacred Land. This was because of the crown on her head, which allowed the Cold Moon Emperor to not fear any emperor for 10 years. Of course, the Cold Moon Emperor couldn't leave the Pirate Sacred Land for 10 years either. This protection was only limited to the 18 Corners pirate sacred land. This was what the first-generation pirate emperor had set up in the Heaven's Legacy secret realm. That was why. Only then could the pirate emperor's throne continue for generations to come. On the same day, Zhao Feng was arranged to stay in a desolate canyon. The entire canyon was a large canyon similar to the 8 Desolate Mountain. The environment of this canyon was extremely bad, and there were storms everywhere. There was basically no one here. On the other hand, there were other superior environments in the canyon region, where the descendants of pirates and some ordinary mortals were stationed. The reason why they chose this place was to prevent the battle between emperors from affecting the innocent. Zhao Feng, rest here for now. If you need anything, you can contact me. The Cold Moon Emperor left behind a message token with a crescent moon symbol. Zhao Feng nodded his head and started to enter seclusion with the child demigod. Along the way, they fought in many places, and their cultivations improved. They had also replenished their resources in the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace. I've absorbed more than 200 wisps of God Tribulation Lightning. More than 200 wisps of ancient lightning symbols could be seen in his purple soul sea. They were mysterious and contained an immortal aura. The God Tribulation Lightning didn't just increase in quantity. The God Tribulation Lightning symbols were also clearer than before. Zhao Feng's comprehension of the Scarlet Gold Wind Lightning had reached 50 to 60%, and he had merged more than twice the God Tribulation intent compared to the Sky Sacred Qin Palace. A layer of ice blue scales appeared on Zhao Feng's body, and the bloodline aura of the 10,000 ancient races became stronger. The increase in one's cultivation and constitution could allow one's bloodline to return to its ancestor. The higher the bloodline, the more potential it had. Ordinary bloodlines could only reach the supremacy or monarch level before reaching the end of their cultivation. However, for bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races, the origin core realm was just the beginning, and void god realms were only in their infancy. Over the past few days, the bloodline of the mystic ice-scaled race and the god's spiritual eye bloodline had grown, and some of its power had awakened. Zhao Feng found that it wasn't just the increase in his cultivation and constitution, but also the ancient dream realm fruits. From the child demigod's desire for the ancient dream realm flesh and spiritual fruits, one could see the effects of the ancient dream realm. Thinking up to here, Zhao Feng took another ancient dream realm fruit and ate it. Only 15 left. In the ancient dream realm, the number of spiritual fruits on the trees became fewer and fewer. 4 or 5 of them had just formed and wouldn't ripen without a few years. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Zhao Feng and the child demigod used every second they had to cultivate. After eating 3 ancient dream realm spiritual fruits and using a bunch of resources, Zhao Feng's cultivation finally broke through. Middle stage of the Void God realm. A scarlet golden wave appeared in Zhao Feng's true Yuan dimension, and it had doubled in size compared to when he was at the early stages of the Void God realm. Unknowingly, Zhao Feng's foundation became stronger. With his emperor-level intent and bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races, his recovery speed was extremely strong, and he could even fight against emperors for a long time. The child demigod ate a total of 4 or 5 ancient dream realm spiritual fruits, and his strength quickly recovered. His golden Kuan sacred body had reached the early stages of the 5th level, and he could challenge emperors with just his physical strength alone. In terms of cultivation, the child demigod was close to the middle stages of the Void God realm. The strength of the master and servant duo had increased greatly. On this day, the Cold Moon Emperor led the 2 peak-tier kings to this desolate canyon. Ever since the pirate emperor's inheritance, the strength of some of the older pirate kings had increased by leaps and bounds. These 2 peak-tier kings were the Giant Shark King and the Ghost Scale King. The Giant Shark King was once one of the 3 major pirate leaders, and he had the ancient shark bloodline. His body and bloodline were extremely strong, and he had once been a meat shield against Emperor Mu Yun. Now that the Giant Shark King had obtained the pirate emperor's inheritance, his strength had also increased dramatically. The Ghost Scale King was a domain-level king that had survived the battle with Emperor Mu Yun, and his survivability was extremely strong. After obtaining the pirate emperor's inheritance, the Ghost Scale King had become a peak-tier king. The Ghost Scale King's body was extremely unique. Not only did he have a high-tier fish scale bloodline, but he also had the Ghost spiritual body. Zhao Feng, the Giant Shark King and the Ghost Scale King are both willing to help you fight against the Emperor of Death, the Cold Moon Emperor said with a smile. Zhao Feng could tell that these two peak-tier kings were very confident that their strength surpassed those of the same cultivation, and they could fight against normal emperors together. Their bloodlines were extraordinary, and their survivability was extremely strong. Zhao Feng, I didn't think that there would be a day where we would work together. The Giant Shark King laughed. The two peak-tier kings both knew how terrifying Zhao Feng's potential was, and he had the bloodline of the mystic ice-scaled race. On top of that, Zhao Feng had fought against the Emperor of Death a few times, and he had managed to escape each time. With their combined strength, they believed that they would be able to fight against the Emperor of Death. Furthermore, this was the territory of the pirate sacred land. At that time, even if they couldn't defeat the Emperor of Death, it would be enough to win Zhao Feng's friendship and favor. On the same day, the Cold Moon Emperor and the two peak-tier kings entered the desolate canyon zone. Zhao Feng and the child demigod continued to cultivate. As the two of them cultivated, the aura they emitted faintly caused the two kings to click their tongues. 3 days later, with the continuous supply of resources, the child demigod's cultivation had recovered to the middle stages of the void god realm, and his sacred body gave off a suffocating pressure. The Cold Moon Emperor, Zhao Feng, and the child demigod, two peak-tier kings. There were a total of 5 great experts guarding the place. Zhao Feng had a feeling that the Emperor of Death would soon arrive. At the same time, a muscular male wearing a crown appeared at the edge of the 18 Corners Pirate's sacred land. He looked to be in his 30s or 40s. Shwa! A crystal flower bud appeared in the Emperor of Death's hand, and it quickly turned into a lotus stage several yards wide. On the lotus platform, a slightly effeminate white-eyed girl appeared. Zhao Feng is in the pirate's sacred land. This battle is a matter of life and death, and it's the turning point of fate. The white-eyed girl slowly raised her hand. Wang, an image appeared in the air, and it depicted an intense battle. The figure in the middle was the Emperor of Death, and he was being surrounded and attacked by several powerful figures. What was incredible was that the scene in the image was moving. Clearly, the ability of the white-eyed girl's eye of destiny had awakened in these years and grown stronger. In the end, the Emperor of Death clashed with a purple-haired young man. A blurry, terrifying figure appeared behind each other. How is this possible? These people can force me to use the shadow of the death god? The Emperor of Death exclaimed. Chapter 745. Master, the next battle is a matter of life and death, and it will decide fate. No matter if we win or lose, Lin won't be able to help. The white-eyed girl bit her lips. She had helped the Emperor of Death this entire time, and this was her limit. After saying this, the white-eyed girl gave a deep bow and said goodbye to the Emperor of Death. If I stay by Master's side, I'll only be a burden. Furthermore, my fate isn't in the Tsang Ocean, but the continent zone. The white-eyed girl explained. A strange light appeared in her mysterious white eyes as she stared in the direction of the legendary continent zone. Fine, I won't force you. The Emperor of Death looked deeply at her. Without Bai Lin's help, he wouldn't have been able to find Zhao Feng in the Tsang Ocean. On top of that, Bai Lin used all her power to predict what was going to happen next. To a certain degree, the Emperor of Death already had the initiative. Disciple has something to say before I leave, Bai Lin suddenly said. Go ahead, the Emperor of Death didn't have time to think. The owner of a god eye is destined by fate, and it's hard to change it. The 9th god eye seems to be even more unique. I hope that Master won't be too stubborn. Bai Lin thought. Both Bai Lin and the Emperor of Death were descendants of the god eyes. The Eye of Destiny and the God Eye of Destiny were only one word apart. The former was the descendant, while the latter was the ancestor. The Eye of Death was the same. If the Emperor of Death's Eye of Death wanted to become the God Eye of Death, he would have to cultivate it to the limit and kill the God of Death to return to its original form. This was because God Eyes were unique and involved the laws of heaven and earth. However, this method was only in theory. The difficulty was so great that it was almost impossible, and there was no practicality. Bai Lin's words were nothing more than a way to persuade her master not to force things. I understand what you mean. The Emperor of Death paused for a moment before continuing with a fiery tone, but the ninth God's Eye hasn't fully awakened, and its master hasn't matured yet. This is the simplest chance to obtain a God Eye. If I lose it, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Compared to stealing and replacing other God Eyes, this was a chance that only came once in billions of years. Even though it was becoming more and more difficult to kill Zhao Feng, the Emperor of Death wouldn't give up even if there was a sliver of hope. Furthermore, the Emperor of Death had the absolute advantage right now. 18 Corners Pirate Holy Land. A dark, shadowy beam of light pierced through the sea of mist. The cold of death that covered the sky made countless sea creatures tremble in deathly silence. It's the Death Emperor. Along the way, some of the experts on the pirate ships were alarmed. In less than a moment, the Cold Moon Emperor, Zhao Feng, and company in the desolate canyon received the news. In order to deal with the Emperor of Death, the Cold Moon Emperor ordered the upper echelon of the pirate sacred land to be on guard. We're almost there. Zhao Feng turned into a bolt of lightning and flew into the sea of mist. The Cold Moon Emperor, the Child Demigod, the Giant Shark King, and the Ghost Scale King arrived. After a while, a part of the heavens and the earth suddenly fell into darkness, and it reflected an ancient, profound, and mighty figure. Emperor of Death. The hearts of the Cold Moon Martial Emperor and the others skipped a beat. The person who came was the oldest legendary martial emperor of the Ash-Gray Sea, known as the Nightmare of Death. One emperor who just became an emperor and 2 peak-tier kings. Zhao Feng, do you really think that you can kill me with just these people? The Emperor of Death's voice was filled with mockery and indifference. He had already seen the current situation through Bai Lin, who had the Eye of Destiny, and he was prepared. Zhao Feng and company looked at each other. The Emperor of Death didn't seem surprised by what was happening in front of him at all. Emperor of Death. Zhao Feng laughed. Almost all of your subordinates have been slain by me, and your disciple Wen Lun self-destructed right in front of me. Is that why you're so confident? Hearing that, the Emperor of Death's expression became grim. The pressure he had just created instantly crumbled. I'll take revenge for them by killing you. I'll find the eyes of Samsara and make it up to them, but you'll die a horrible death. The smile on the Emperor of Death's face became colder and more deadly. The Cold Moon Emperor and company couldn't help but hiccup. The Emperor of Death wasn't just evil. Not only did he want to kill Zhao Feng for the rest of his life, he also wanted him to live a life worse than death. The atmosphere between the two sides froze. The Emperor of Death suddenly spread his arms, and a sticky, dark dimension of death appeared in the sky. Little world. The Cold Moon Emperor and company felt the power of an unstoppable little world. The endless darkness of the little world of death crazily devoured the heaven-earth Yuan Qi nearby and pulled in the souls of all living beings. The bodies of the Child Demigod and the 2 peak-tier kings dropped as they felt a great pressure. The surging power of death formed a ring shape and kept on expanding, as if it wanted to kill everyone in one fell swoop. The little world of death started to condense in their vision, and it was like a dark abyss. The consequences of being sucked in would be unimaginable. Then I'll break your little world. The Cold Moon Emperor's expression was cold as she slashed out with her sword and blade, causing the air to be sliced apart by a beam of moonlight and blade light. The dazzling and cold rainbow light of the sword and saber slashed open a huge ravine in the dark and deathly silent void. A bottomless crack appeared in the little world of death. The cold rays of light that were intersected by the sword and blade shot out horizontally and vertically, and as they warped, they emanated a crushing force that caused the death dimension to show signs of instability. The Emperor of Death's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect this person to be an emperor that specialized in swords and sabers. When the Cold Moon Emperor was a king, her sharp attacks were one of the strongest even in the pirate sacred land. Although she hadn't formed a small world, her space domain was close to materialization. She compressed it into her sword and saber attacks. Every saber and every sword had a kind of condensed starry sky cold radiance that could cleave the heavens and split the earth. In terms of offense, the Cold Moon Emperor was much stronger than normal emperors. Attack together. The Giant Shark King and the Ghost Scales King circulated their bloodline power and attacked the little world of death with the battle power of a peak-tier king. Sacred body dominating power. The child demigod's body glowed with a golden light as he grew to the height of an adult. His powerful sacred body formed a golden figure in the air that crushed down on the Emperor of Death and his little world. Rumble. At this moment, the Emperor of Death's little world started to tremble, and many cracks appeared. His own body also sank as he felt the pressure of the sacred body's tyrannical power. The Emperor of Death had underestimated the Cold Moon Emperor and the two peak-tier kings, as well as underestimated the child demigod's growth. The child demigod had reached the middle stages of the Void God realm, and his golden Kuan sacred body had reached the early stages of the 5th level. Adding on his transcendent intent, it wouldn't be hard for him to fight against an emperor for a short period of time. I didn't think that a demigod like you would become that brat's slave. The Emperor of Death glanced at the child demigod. The child demigod's movements froze, but he didn't hesitate and continued to attack the little world of death. At this moment, Zhao Feng hadn't even joined the battle yet, but the Emperor of Death's little world of death started to tremble. However, the little world of death was extremely unique. It furiously absorbed the heaven-earth yuan qi, and all the life forms nearby turned into bones. The attacks from the outside world would be devoured by the little world of death and turned into its own power to recover or counterattack. It was the same as the principle of the death force field. Even if several emperors teamed up, they wouldn't be able to shatter the little world of death in a short amount of time. The Emperor of Death isn't attacking first like before. He's unleashing his little world of death. He's preparing something. Zhao Feng didn't participate in the attack. He needed to hold back to deal with the Emperor of Death's next move. The little world of death specialized in support and defense, but its offensive capabilities were average. Vengeful Spirit of Death. The Emperor of Death's Eye of Death revealed a bottomless whirlpool. In the next instant, several chilling and terrifying auras emanated from the vortex. Woo, a few hair-raising roars rang out from the small world of death. Shwa, shwa. 3 seemingly corporeal spirits of death shot out from the Eye of Death. Each of them was at least 100 yards tall. The spirits of death in the middle radiated a magnificent aura that was comparable to an emperor. Emperor Spirits of Death. Zhao Feng's god spiritual eye saw these signs. Looking closely, the Emperor Spirits of Death looked like Emperor Mu Yun, but it wasn't completely the same. They seemed to have merged with the aura of other emperors. The other 2 spirits of death gave off soul undulations that were comparable to peak-tier kings. As they screamed, the 3 spirits of death charged out of the little world and leapt toward the Cold Moon Emperor and company. The hearts of the Cold Moon Emperor and company went numb as they felt a piercing pain in their souls. Each of the vengeful spirits was formed from the remnant souls of at least 2 or 3 emperors or kings at the same rank as them. The Cold Moon Emperor, the Giant Shark King, and the Ghost Scales King were pushed back. These 3 spirits of death weren't normal spirits of death. They had the soul of an emperor or king, and their physical attacks were half a level lower. The Cold Moon Emperor had no advantage in terms of the soul and was suppressed by the Emperor's spirits of death. The Giant Shark King and the Ghost Scales King were both pushed back by the King's spirits of death, and their minds were about to shatter. Just measly spirits of death. Let me kill these 2 kings first. Zhao Feng snickered coldly. Mental energy spike. A large purple mental energy spike shot out from Zhao Feng's left eye, and it was surrounded by a mysterious dark lightning symbol. Boom! One of the king's spirits of death was pierced by the mental energy spike, and its soul was instantly destroyed. One had to know Zhao Feng's mental energy spike contained a wisp of god tribulation lightning that could destroy souls. Everyone was stunned when they saw a peak-tier king's spirit of death being destroyed. Just as Zhao Feng was feeling smug, he sensed something, and his expression changed dramatically. Master, save me. The child demigod exclaimed. Gaze of death. The Emperor of Death's pitch-black eyes of death locked onto the child demigod. The child demigod struggled in pain, and a faint golden yuan soul almost left his body. So the Emperor of Death used the gaze of death when Zhao Feng used the mental energy spike to kill the spirit of death. His target is the child demigod. Zhao Feng's heart dropped. Only now did he realize that he had fallen into the Emperor of Death's trap. The spirit of death had been summoned to distract Zhao Feng. Although the child demigod's intent was high, his soul was still at the level of a king. It was only his intent and body that were strong. He walked the path of a body cultivator, and even in his previous life, the Tao of the soul was his weakness. Chapter 746. Master, save me. The child demigod started to struggle, and his faint golden yuan soul almost left his body. If it weren't for the fact that his demigod intent were very strong, a normal late-stage void god realm king's soul would have been sucked away by the Emperor of Death already. As long as I take care of this demigod Kuan Yun, Zhao Feng's helpers won't be a problem. The Emperor of Death stood in the little world of death and circulated his eye of death. At the same time, the dark golden crown on his head released a powerful undulation of soul power that increased his Tao of soul techniques. I've been tricked. Zhao Feng's expression became solemn. The demigod Kuan Yun was extremely useful in the fight against the Emperor of Death. The child demigod's sacred body and fist techniques could suppress the Emperor of Death's intent and limit his strength. If they lost the child demigod, Zhao Feng and company would face the Emperor of Death in his peak state. The gaze of death was already more than halfway done, and it had already dragged the child demigod out of his body. The Emperor of Death had prepared beforehand and used his little world of death as a barrier. At the same time, he used his Emperor-level vengeful spirits to stall the Cold Moon Emperor. In order to stop the Emperor of Death, I need to charge into the little world of death and break through this barrier. Zhao Feng's thoughts spun. According to this conventional train of thought, it was almost impossible. This was because the child demigod's soul would be sucked away by the gaze of death in just a breath's time. If that's the case, Zhao Feng took a deep breath as a purple eye bloodline power formed a bottomless whirlpool in his left eye. What? The Emperor of Death paused before exclaiming, "How is this possible?" Shua. The faint golden yuan soul that had just been dragged out froze in midair as it was pulled by another force. The Emperor of Death's gaze of death felt a strong resistance. A bottomless purple whirlpool appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye, and it connected to a misty purple world. A fatal attraction appeared from Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye. Great! The child demigod was overjoyed as he felt a soul Tao secret technique similar to the gaze of death pull him toward his body. Gaze of the god eye? How dare you steal my death secret technique? The Emperor of Death's smile froze on his face. At this moment, his breathing was hurried, and his anger surged. He was flustered and exasperated, and his face was ashen. Death gaze was his signature secret skill, yet that kid had actually stolen it. As long as one had a certain level of attainment and understanding of the soul Tao, it was not difficult to absorb the target soul. The key is the eye bloodline. It's the fulcrum. Zhao Feng's purple hair blew in the wind as his left eye locked onto the child demigod. Death gaze vs gaze of the god eye. The principles of the two secret skills were basically the same. Furthermore, both of their eye bloodlines leaned towards the soul. Zhao Feng had faced the attack of the gaze of death twice before. The first time was at the Purple Saint Ruins, and the second time was at the edge of the pirate sacred land. Furthermore, Zhao Feng had studied the Emperor of Death's Dark Eye secret technique and understood the principles behind many soul Tao techniques and eye bloodline techniques. With the god's spiritual eye's understanding, it wasn't hard for him to create his own gaze of the god eye. In the air, the faint golden yuan soul of the child demigod was slowly returning to his body. Since he had demigod intent, his struggle against the gaze of death was close to that of an emperor. This was the same as saying the Emperor of Death had to face the combined attacks of the child demigod and Zhao Feng. The child demigod obviously struggled and followed Zhao Feng's direction. Emperor of Death, your soul Tao eye bloodline techniques will become even more powerful in my hands. Zhao Feng laughed. The Emperor of Death was already extremely angry, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he heard this. Shua. The faint golden yuan soul of the child demigod returned to his body and started to defend it with Zhao Feng's help. In order to prevent the Emperor of Death from attacking further, Zhao Feng circulated his eye bloodline power and set up a layer of God Tribulation lightning around the child demigod's yuan soul. If the Emperor of Death tried to do anything to the child demigod, he would suffer the backlash of the God Tribulation lightning. At the very least, it wouldn't go as smoothly. Master, it's lucky that you helped in time. The child demigod let out a long breath. On the other side, the Cold Moon Emperor, the Giant Shark King, and the Ghost Scales King were slowly gaining the upper hand against the spirits of death. The spirits of death mainly used the Tao of the soul, and their physical attacks weren't strong. After the Cold Moon Emperor and company familiarized themselves with the attacks of the spirits of death, they started to learn how to deal with them. The Giant Shark King and the Ghost Scales King teamed up and beat one of the spirits of death into howling. The Ghost Scales King had the body of a ghost, so he had strong resistance against the attacks of the spirits of death. Zhao Feng and the child demigod didn't hesitate and started to attack the little world of death. Scarlet Gold Exploding Fist. Zhao Feng circulated the scarlet gold wind lightning and punched out, causing his vision to be filled with a scarlet gold storm of lightning and fire. In an instant, the dark dimension was dyed red by the scarlet gold light and started to shake. Zhao Feng's punch contained the power of 3 spatial domains and smashed into the little world of death. Boom! Crack! Cracks started to appear on the surface of the little world of death, and a hole several miles wide appeared. The scarlet gold exploding fist contained the element of fire within the scarlet gold wind lightning, and it also contained the power of God Tribulation lightning. Not good. The Emperor of Death's expression changed dramatically. The little world of death he was in was heavily injured, and large cracks started to appear. At this moment, Zhao Feng's soul had absorbed 200 to 300 wisps of God Tribulation lightning, and his aura was even more condensed than before. The power of the God Tribulation lightning and destruction intent was unimaginable, and it was difficult to repair. The Emperor of Death's little world also used a vast true yuan dimension as its core. Normally, he could repair the little world with his own power. However, the God Tribulation lightning's power of destruction had damaged the little world's foundation, and it was a permanent injury. Emperor of Death, I'll destroy your little world first. Zhao Feng roared as he unleashed a barrage of attacks. A pair of scarlet gold wings spread behind his back as he spun around the little world of death and attacked furiously. The wings of wind and lightning increased his power, and the advantage in speed allowed Zhao Feng to retreat and advance as he pleased. Sealing Yuan Palm. Sky Sealing 18 Palms. The child demigod used a legendary secret technique to greatly restrict the Emperor of Death's strength. Under the child demigod's attacks, the flow of Yuan Qi within the little world of death started to freeze, and the power of the little world was restricted. How is this possible? The Death Emperor was extremely enraged as he watched his little world being destroyed by the chains. Compared to last time, both Zhao Feng and the child demigod's strength had increased by an incredible amount. This was especially so for Zhao Feng. He had cultivated the scarlet gold wind lightning, and he had absorbed 200 to 300 wisps of God Tribulation lightning. Zhao Feng focused on the flaws of the little world of death and destroyed it deeply. His God spiritual eye could also see more and more flaws in the Emperor of Death's little world. Death Force Field. The Emperor of Death's little world started to fade, and it was replaced by a terrifying pitch-black force field that devoured all the life force and power nearby. The range of the Death Force Field was smaller, so it couldn't unleash the full power of the little world. However, this secret technique was extremely strong, and it could absorb and reverse attacks. However, the power of Zhao Feng's scarlet gold wind lightning wasn't the same as before, and it contained even more God Tribulation lightning. Rumble. The Death Force Field started to tremble, and the absorption rate of Zhao Feng's attacks dropped to less than 30%. The power of the God Tribulation lightning countered almost everything in heaven and earth. Even the power of death countered the power of God Tribulation lightning, so how could it be absorbed? Every time they clashed, the Emperor of Death's Death Force Field would tremble and expend more energy. Sealing Yuan Palm. The child demigod's attacking style also started to change. The sealing yuan palm restricted all kinds of yuan qi, and when it reached a certain level, it could restrict all the yuan qi in an area. At that point in time, only the power of one's body wouldn't be restricted. This secret technique and his cultivation were unparalleled. The death force field was essentially a form of energy, and under the origin restricting palm, it appeared to wither and dim to a certain extent, and its power decreased sharply. Scythe of Death. The Emperor of Death counterattacked, and a giant scythe surrounded by black mist appeared in his hand. The giant scythe of death slashed toward Zhao Feng and the child demigod. However, under the restriction of the origin sealing palm, the Emperor of Death's yuan qi felt like it was stagnating, whether it was attacking or defending. Ding! Bam! Sparks flew from Zhao Feng and the child demigod. Both of their physiques and defenses had reached a monstrous level. Zhao Feng had the bloodline of the Mystic Ice-scaled race, so he had a Mystic Ice domain that could freeze everything that got close to him. The ice-blue scales on his body were extremely strong. The child demigod's golden Kuan's sacred body had reached the early stages of the 5th level, and even peak-tier kings would find it hard to break through his defense. As long as he was together with Zhao Feng, they would be able to deal with the Emperor of Death's counterattack. Watch me destroy your death force field. Zhao Feng moved quickly with the child demigod, and a scarlet golden spear several hundred yards long condensed in his hand. The scarlet golden wind lightning appeared in the shape of a spear, and its power was condensed. The scarlet golden spear radiated an aura of destruction and the power of God tribulation lightning as it pierced holes in the death force field. Cracks started to appear on the surface of the death force field, and it started to show signs of becoming unstable. Ding! 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 The Emperor of Death waved his scythe of death and clashed with Zhao Feng's scarlet golden spear, creating a forbidden power that could annihilate everything. Retreat! The expressions of the giant shark king and the ghost-scaled king changed dramatically as they started to retreat. What shocking power! The Cold Moon Emperor felt the clash between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death, who were both peak emperors. Even she had to give way a little. The remaining king-ranked vengeful spirit was already covered in injuries, and it was instantly destroyed in the battle. The Emperor of Death focused on fighting Zhao Feng and the child demigod, so he didn't have time to care about the vengeful spirits. The more he fought, the more shocked he became. Zhao Feng's strength had increased by a terrifying amount. His scarlet golden wind lightning had already surpassed the wind lightning emperor's system, and his battle power was even stronger than the wind lightning emperor when he was at his peak. At least, the wind lightning emperor hadn't merged the power of God tribulation lightning into it. This Zhao Feng already has the strength of a peak emperor. The Cold Moon Emperor and the 2 peak-tier kings were stunned. Chapter 747. Zhao Feng's current battle power wasn't any weaker than a peak emperor's. The Scarlet Gold Wind Lightning had merged with the power of God Tribulation Lightning and surpassed the Wind Lightning Emperor's cultivation system. The Mystic Ice-scaled race had a bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races and a powerful physical defense. God's Spiritual Eye. The potential of the 9th God's Eye made the Emperor of Death wary. The only thing he lacked was his foundation. After all, most Void God Realm Emperors had lived for a very long time. In the air above the limitless ocean, the battle between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death became extremely intense. Of course, the child demigod's use couldn't be ignored. Because of him, the Emperor of Death's techniques were restricted, and he couldn't use his full battle power. The Emperor of Death felt extremely frustrated. His biggest trump card, the Eye of Death, was countered by the 9th God's Eye to a certain degree. Just now, when the gaze of death and the gaze of the God Eye clashed, his eye bloodline trembled. He didn't dare to use the Eye of Death easily because he was worried that it would awaken the 9th God's Eye. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded from not far away, and a scream sounded in the soul dimension. The remaining Emperor-level vengeful spirit had been killed by the combined forces of the Cold Moon Emperor and company. Attack together. The Cold Moon Emperor, the Giant Shark King, and the Ghost Scales King, the 3 strongest leaders of the Pirates' Sacred Land, charged over. None of them were easy to deal with. The Giant Shark King and the Ghost Scales King had unique bloodlines, and their battle power was close to an emperor's. Their defense and survivability were especially strong. At this moment, just as the white-eyed girl had predicted, the Emperor of Death was surrounded. Why? The Emperor of Death felt an unstoppable force. He was prepared for this, but it didn't change in the end. The addition of the Cold Moon Emperor and company put the Emperor of Death at a disadvantage for the first time. Peerless sword and saber. The Cold Moon Emperor's sword and saber intertwined and formed a storm of swords and sabers. Wang, Shu. The storm of swords and sabers spun at a high speed. Countless particles of cold light were like mercury, penetrating the void of the world. Everywhere it passed, everything was cut up and twisted into dust particles. The Emperor of Death's force field started to crack even more as the peerless sword and saber cut into it. The Cold Moon Emperor was very courageous and directly leapt towards the Death force field. Everyone was shocked. The Emperor of Death sneered. Charging into the Death force field at such a close distance was no different from courting death. The Death force field possessed powerful devouring and backlash abilities. However, a shocking scene appeared. The pirate crown on the Cold Moon Emperor's head gave off a mysterious connection with the 18 Corners pirate sacred land. All of a sudden, the Cold Moon Emperor's body was enveloped in a dazzling rainbow light. The protection of that power increased her defense by more than 10 times. Boom! The Cold Moon Emperor's storm of blades and swords charged into the Death force field and clashed. No matter who won or lost, the Cold Moon Great Emperor was undefeatable. The protection of the pirate sacred land. Only then did the Emperor of Death remember that the Cold Moon Emperor was the new pirate emperor and was protected by the pirate sacred land. One had to know. The Cold Moon Emperor was an emperor that specialized in offense. Now that she had the protection of the sacred land, she was undefeatable and would be extremely difficult to deal with. Boom! The 5 experts teamed up and finally caused the Death force field to shatter into pieces. Bam! The instant the Death force field collapsed, the Emperor of Death suffered a backlash and was pushed back a few miles. Even though he had the immortal death body, he was still at a disadvantage. Before he could stabilize his body, a voice rang out. Wind lightning wings slash. A pair of scarlet golden wings of lightning appeared out of nowhere in front of the Emperor of Death, and the scorching glow of the wings sliced right into the Emperor of Death. The scarlet golden wind lightning wings slash released the aura of God Tribulation lightning and exploded on the Emperor of Death's body. A bone-deep gash was left on the Emperor of Death's body. If it wasn't for the fact that he had the immortal death body, a normal emperor would either die or be crippled. The Emperor of Death groaned in pain. He was injured quite badly. The scariest thing was that the God Tribulation lightning and the power of destruction were almost permanent and couldn't be healed. Restricting Yuan Palm. Sword and blade rainbow. The child demigod and the Cold Moon Emperor charged over from another direction. The Death Emperor had no choice but to summon his little world of death to resist the attacks from the crowd. However, this was just to stall for time. Under the combined attacks of the 5 experts, the little world of death wouldn't be able to last for long. In just a few breaths' time, the little world of death started to crack and crack, some of which were left behind from before. Don't let him run. Zhao Feng and the Cold Moon Emperor looked at each other before charging into the little world of death. Under normal situations, entering the enemy's little world would put them in a disadvantageous situation. However, the little world of death was full of cracks and flaws, so Zhao Feng and the Cold Moon Emperor weren't scared. The Cold Moon Emperor was protected by the pirate sacred land and was undefeatable, so she obviously wasn't worried. Ice Imperial Spear. A layer of ice blue liquid flowed out of Zhao Feng's bloodline and formed a dark blue ice armor that covered his body. This was another layer of ice imperial armor on top of his mystic ice-scaled race bloodline. Frozen heaven and earth. Zhao Feng roared as he released the full power of his 10,000 ancient races bloodline. A surge of blue coldness instantly froze the space around them. In the small world of death, a scene of ice and snow appeared. The power of the small world was also frozen to a certain extent, and was further weakened. Unparalleled sword and saber. The Cold Moon Great Emperor swung her sword and blade around, creating a storm of blades and swords. Silver-like particles of light filled the air and pierced through the air. Wherever the two of them passed, the matter in the small world would shatter into pieces. Rumble! The Emperor of Death's little world started to tremble. It wasn't far from disintegrating, and parts of it started to shatter. So, Zhao Feng and the Cold Moon Emperor charged toward the Emperor of Death. In this dimension, the Emperor of Death was protected by the little world. Unfortunately, the little world of death was on the verge of collapsing and couldn't provide much help to him. They forced me to this step, as expected of the owner of the ninth God's Eye. The Emperor of Death sighed. His pitch-black eyes spun and released an aura of death that could pierce through heaven and earth. I can't do this by myself. Zhao Feng didn't let his guard down. Although the Emperor of Death had suffered a great loss and was injured, he still retained at least 95% of his battle power. Boom! Crack! Under everyone's pincer attack, the small world of death began to peel off and split apart, producing bursts of explosive power. The three of them stood in the pitch-black dimension, but they weren't injured at all. Both the Emperor of Death and Zhao Feng's physical defense had reached an unbelievable level. The Cold Moon Emperor's physical defense was weaker, but she was protected by the pirate's sacred land. The Emperor of Death's pitch-black eyes started to burn with the power of death, and a cold flame appeared in them. Burning eye bloodline power? Zhao Feng was stunned. The Emperor of Death's body was covered in a cold flame of death. After the flame of death covered the Emperor of Death's body, it expanded and turned into a giant shadow of death. Zhao Feng and the Cold Moon Emperor's hearts shook as they felt a forbidden aura of death that ruled over heaven and earth. Heaven and earth became deathly silent. Wu, the giant shadow of death made of illusory death flames, held a giant scythe in its hand as it merged with the dark, silent world. At this moment, everyone's hearts shook as if they were covered by the shadow of the god of death. Suddenly, the eyes of the giant shadow of death slowly opened, shooting out two beams of death light. It was a cold divine light that seemed to dominate life and death, as if it was looking down on all living things in the world. Shadow of the god of death. Could this be the power of the legendary owner of the god of death's eye, the god of death? Zhao Feng and company felt their souls being suppressed, and all of their power seemed to be restricted. In their vision, the shadow of the god of death started to condense and radiate a forbidden aura of death that caused everything within 10,000 miles to fall into darkness. At this moment, the life and death of all living beings were controlled by the god of death. The shadow of the god of death uses the bloodline of the eyes of death to summon a wisp of the god of death's power. Zhao Feng, I didn't think that you would actually force me to this step. The Emperor of Death revealed a painful expression as he was enveloped by the shadow of the god of death. The shadow of the god of death was burning his bloodline and eye bloodline power at every second. Luckily, victory was his. God of Death's eye. This is a wisp of the god's eye's power. The Cold Moon Emperor, the child demigod, and company were stunned. They couldn't control their souls anymore. The eyes of the death god's shadow were able to control their souls and life and death just by looking down. The only one struggling was Zhao Feng. The mystic ice-scaled race bloodline within his body started to tremble uneasily. After all, this was a wisp of the god of death's power. Zhao Feng circulated his mystic ice-scaled race bloodline to the maximum and started to burn. A thick layer of ice-blue dragon scales covered his body. In the next instant, the roar of a dragon sounded, and the image of an enormous ice-blue dragon appeared behind Zhao Feng. The power of an ancient mystic dragon shook heaven and earth, and a blinding light smashed against heaven and earth that had fallen into darkness. This is the power of the 10,000 ancient races' bloodline awakening. Zhao Feng was surprised. This move came from his bloodline inheritance, and he didn't expect it to be used in this situation. However, facing the roar of the mystic ice dragon, the flaming shadow of the god of death didn't move. The fear and despair of being controlled by the mystic ice dragon was still present. The scythe in the shadow of the god of death's hand suddenly slashed down. Instantly, half of the Cold Moon Emperor's soul left her body. Even though the child demigod and the two peak-tier kings weren't within the attack range, Their souls seemed to be restricted and could leave their bodies at any moment. Only Zhao Feng was able to resist it. His god's spiritual eye was extremely resilient against soul-based attacks and techniques. A rapid thumping sound came from Zhao Feng's left eye. The ancient god is broken, and the ancient god is turned to dust. A desolate sigh seemed to pass through time and space and resounded in Zhao Feng's ears. Boom! The dimension of his left eye shook as Zhao Feng's eye bloodline power started to boil. A faint purple flame covered Zhao Feng's body. Within the faint purple flames, the shadow of an ancient fiend god that covered the heavens and earth was born. A grand aura from the ancient god swept over, and the actions of the shadow of the god of death froze. Chapter 748. The figure of the ancient god demon covered the sky, and it was formed from faint purple flames that radiated a grand aura of the ancient era. Zhao Feng felt his eye bloodline power quickly burn, and he revealed a painful expression. He finally understood why the Emperor of Death would only use the shadow of the Death God if he had no other choice. Shua! The cold Moon Emperor's soul suddenly returned to her body, and she was covered in cold sweat. Even with the protection of the pirate sacred land, she wasn't truly unrivaled. Even Mystic Light Realm's sacred lords would be wary of the Emperor of Death's shadow when he used it without caring about the price. The figure of the ancient god demon stood on Zhao Feng's body, but its outline was blurry. He could only tell from its aura and certain signs that it was the phantom of a fiend god from the primordial era. At this moment, the figure of the Mystic Ice-scaled race's Mystic Ice Dragon around Zhao Feng trembled and circled around the figure of the ancient god demon. In the air, the power of the shadow of the death god and the figure of the ancient god demon clashed, and the shockwave sent the cold Moon Emperor flying. Bam! The cold Moon Emperor retreated 100 miles with a pale white face. If it weren't for the fact that she had the protection of the pirate sacred land, a normal peak emperor would have been severely injured even if they didn't die. Although the child demigod and the other two peak-tier kings were far away, they were still sent flying like pieces of paper. Boom! Boom! The two enormous illusory figures separated from their masters and clashed in the air above the mist sea. Explosions sounded, and flames swept across the soul dimension. In his senses, there was an illusion of space swaying and overlapping. It's the power of the bloodline awakening. The child demigod was stunned. The shadow of the death god was a wisp of the death god's eye's power that the Emperor of Death had activated through his eye bloodline. In essence, it was a power that stimulated the origin of the bloodline beyond its level. The figure of the ancient god demon behind Zhao Feng had activated the power of the god demon's eye that hadn't awakened yet. The difference was Zhao Feng was the first-generation ancestor. The two giant shadows in the sky above the ethereal sea became dimmer every time they collided. Meanwhile, Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death's complexions would become weaker. Bang! Crack! The image of the primordial god-fiend surrounded by the profound ice dragon smashed the Grim Reaper's image into pieces. However, the figure of the ancient god-fiend also became extremely dim and crashed into the Emperor of Death with a boom. Not good. The Emperor of Death flew back, but the crown on his head and the undying death body blocked most of the damage for him. Kacha! The shadow of the primordial fiend god and the shadow of the profound ice dragon dissipated at the same time. Zhao Feng's expression was weak. This method of activating the origin of one's bloodline was based on burning one's life force and eye bloodline power. He could feel that his eye bloodline power was showing signs of weakening. Death's shadow. The Emperor of Death turned into a dark ray of light and disappeared from everyone's sight. In terms of speed, the Death Instant Shadow was inferior to the Lightning Wing's spatial flash, but its strangeness was extraordinary. He's so fast. The Cold Moon Emperor and company hadn't even reacted yet. At the same time, everyone felt relieved. It wasn't easy to force the Emperor of Death to such a degree. Sky-locking bow. Zhao Feng's eyes flashed as he held a dark silver bow with mysterious carvings on it. A dazzling scarlet gold light arrow appeared on the bowstring. Surrounded by wind and lightning, an indestructible and sharp aura of metal pierced through the air. In the next instant, the Emperor of Death, who had escaped several thousand miles away, felt a sharp aura lock onto him. In fact, he even felt that the void he was in seemed to be locked down. Even the death instant shadow escape technique felt like it was being shackled. The sky lock bow, as the name suggested, could lock a part of the void. Zhao Feng's intent had reached this level. The scarlet golden arrow seemed to jump out of space and stabbed into the Emperor of Death's heart. Sky bow. The Emperor of Death's body froze as the scarlet golden arrow almost pierced through his heart. If that was all, he wouldn't be scared of the immortal death body. However, the scarlet golden arrow contained the power of wind lightning and the laws of God tribulation lightning. Even the immortal death body was countered by it. Death instant shadow. The Emperor of Death almost burned his true yuan to escape even faster. If he stayed in the pirate sacred land, he wouldn't be able to escape death. After all, there was still the Cold Moon Emperor and the other pirate kings. Once I escape, I'll definitely refine all my enemies into vengeful spirits of death when I return in the future. The Emperor of Death was filled with hatred and humiliation. As the oldest emperor in the Tsang Ocean, he had gone through 2 reincarnations. Apart from a handful of mystic light realm sacred lords, he was unrivaled at the peak of emperors. When had he ever suffered such a crushing defeat and humiliation? Right at this moment, whoosh. The second scarlet golden arrow pierced through the air and landed on his head. The Emperor of Death groaned as his body shook. However, this time, he was on guard. A layer of dark markings of death appeared around his body, increasing the defense of the immortal death body. Zhao Feng shot a total of 3 arrows until the Emperor of Death was out of range. Cold Moon Emperor, Giant Shark King, King Ghost Scales, thank you for your help. I will repay you in the future. Zhao Feng said in a solemn tone. He took a deep breath and circulated his bloodline true yuan to recover faster. The child demigod stood next to him and looked in the direction that the Emperor of Death escaped in. Zhao Feng, are you going to chase after the Emperor of Death? The Cold Moon Emperor asked with surprise. Everyone had worked hard to defeat the Emperor of Death. If Zhao Feng chased after the Emperor of Death by himself, it would be dangerous. I can't give the Emperor of Death a chance to live. I'll return the humiliation to him double. Zhao Feng's expression was firm. Shua, put. A pair of scarlet golden wings formed behind Zhao Feng's back, and the child demigod entered the ancient metal ring. Lightning wings spatial flash. A long, narrow arc of lightning flashed through the misty sea in Nye Tian's vision. Zhao Feng's speed was even faster than the Emperor of Death. With Zhao Feng's strength and speed, he shouldn't be at a disadvantage as long as he doesn't let his guard down. The Cold Moon Emperor let out a breath. Zhao Feng had the battle power of a peak emperor, and his speed was unparalleled. Most importantly, he wasn't scared of the Eye of Death. This was something that other emperors couldn't do. Furthermore, Zhao Feng had the sky-locking bow. Within the limitless ocean, a dark, shadowy ray of light and a rainbow-like arc of lightning entangled one after the other. Zhao Feng's lightning wings spatial flash had the advantage in terms of speed. Every time he entered attack range, Zhao Feng would pull back the sky-locking bow and shoot an arrow. Shua. The Emperor of Death harumphed. All he could do was strengthen his defense and reduce the damage from the sky-locking bow to the lowest. Because the attacks from the sky-locking bow couldn't be dodged unless there was a huge difference in cultivation. However, Zhao Feng's sky-locking bow and the god's spiritual eye couldn't be dodged once they locked onto the target. However, every time Zhao Feng attacked, he would need to pause or slow down a bit. Every time the Emperor of Death was hit, he would use the momentum to increase the distance between them. I still can't find a way to counter the immortal death body. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. The Emperor of Death had the immortal body. The immortal body was said to be undying, and its defense and recovery speed were monstrous. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhao Feng merged the God Tribulation lightning into it, he wouldn't have had any hope of killing the Emperor of Death. However, there was a limit to Zhao Feng's God Tribulation lightning, and he couldn't use it endlessly. The immortal death body didn't have any weak points, so it was basically a walking corpse with an immortal body. The Emperor of Death had the power of death, and when he was in a walking corpse state, his recovery speed surpassed that of an emperor. A few days later, Zhao Feng chased after the Emperor of Death and entered another island zone. His breathing was rough and he was extremely weak. The Emperor of Death was in an even worse state, and his body was covered in injuries. Zhao Feng turned into a streak of scarlet lightning and landed on an island filled with Yuan Qi to rest. The Emperor of Death's injuries are much heavier than mine, but his foundation and true Yuan far surpass mine. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled. He ate a spiritual fruit from the ancient dream realm and ate a few recovery spiritual pills to speed up his recovery. Master, you can start from another direction and attack the Emperor of Death from the soul dimension. The child demigod reminded. Soul domain? Zhao Feng fell into deep thought. His god eye was a soul-type god eye, and the Emperor of Death was also leaning towards this. The soul is the origin of all living beings. Even if you manage to break the immortal death body, it would still be difficult for you to stop the Emperor of Death's reincarnation. The child demigod explained. That's right. Zhao Feng nodded. In fact, he had also thought of starting from the soul level. However, the Emperor of Death's mastery in the Tao of Soul was shocking, and he had the Eye of Death. Furthermore, the dark golden crown he was wearing was a soul path treasure. It could strengthen soul path secret techniques, soul path defenses, and soul recovery. Although it's a little difficult, this is the most thorough path to extinction. Zhao Feng made a decision. His eye bloodline was at the level of a god eye, and he had absorbed the power of the god tribulation lightning in his soul. This was his advantage over the Emperor of Death. Thunder Wing's spatial flash. After resting for half a day, Zhao Feng immediately headed into the limitless ocean to continue his pursuit. Although his cultivation wasn't as strong as the Emperor of Death's, he still had an Emperor intent and a 10,000 ancient races bloodline. In terms of recovery speed, he was stronger than the Emperor of Death. Half a day is enough for the Emperor of Death to run a certain distance. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled, but he remained calm and confident. He immediately opened his god's spiritual eye and started to follow the aura left behind by the Emperor of Death. The god's spiritual eye could see the essence of things, and its analysis was extremely strong. This was also why Zhao Feng could copy other people's secret techniques. In terms of tracking, it was top tier. Furthermore, Zhao Feng had the little thieving cat's divination ability. He purposely left a wisp of the Emperor of Death's eye intent in his soul sea in order to take revenge one day. So, Zhao Feng confirmed a direction and used the Thunder Wing's spatial flash. He firmly believed that the Emperor of Death, who was severely injured and had lost a lot of energy, needed to rest more than him. Chapter 749. Above the limitless ocean. A dark streak of light entered an island that was filled with Yuan Qi and was much larger than the Azure Flower continent. An hour later, on the island in a 1.5-star sect. Arg! Shrill and miserable cries resounded without end. The Emperor of Death stood in the air above the sect, and his shattered little world of death covered the entire sect. Emperor, why did you slaughter my clan? A sovereign at the Origin Core realm knelt on the ground with red eyes and a trembling voice. The Luo Ling clan has no enmity with you. Please let us live. The other sovereign lord begged. Even a shattered little world wasn't something a 1.5-star clan could block. In the eyes of the Emperor of Death, those who hadn't reached the 2-star level were just a bunch of ants. Tentacles of Death. The Emperor of Death's body was surrounded by a black mist of death that spat out pitch-black tentacles. These tentacles instantly wrapped around those at the True Spirit realm and Origin Core realm in the little world of death. In an instant, the life force of those at the True Spirit realm and Origin Core realm started to fade. On the other hand, the Emperor of Death's pale face started to recover. The Emperor of Death's Yuan Qi was replenished. The tentacles of death was a healing technique of his. Devouring the life force of others to heal his own injuries and replenish his own Yuan Qi. The greatest advantage of this kind of death-healing secret technique that harmed oneself to benefit others was its speed. The downside was that the Yuan Qi replenished wasn't pure and needed time to refine. If one absorbed too much, it would affect their own true Yuan. Furthermore, the healing wasn't complete, especially for fatal injuries. If one relied too much on it, it would leave hidden injuries. Even with these small flaws, the touch of death was a quick method to absorb the energy of others and heal oneself. It was still heaven-defying. Less than an hour later, the 1.5-star clan called the Luo Ling clan was destroyed by the Emperor of Death. I've recovered 40 to 50% of my Yuan Qi, but my injuries aren't perfect. The Emperor of Death murmured. The Luo Ling clan was a pile of white bones. For an emperor like him, he needed to be at least at the origin core realm to use the tentacles of death. Several hours later, the Emperor of Death had destroyed another 1-star sect. His Yuan Qi had recovered to 60 to 70%. The recovery of my injuries is a little slow, the Emperor of Death frowned. Injuries caused by great Emperor realm experts and their comprehensions of the mystical powers weren't something that could be easily healed. Not to mention that Zhao Feng's Crimson Gold Tempest contained the Flame Thunder Annihilation and the profound meaning of the Divine Tribulation. I need to find some kings to speed up my recovery. Thinking to there, the Emperor of Death quickly left the island. From the soul of an origin core realm sovereign lord, he found that there was a 2-star sect in a nearby island zone. The Emperor of Death naturally didn't care about ordinary 2-star sections. Half a day later, in a 2-star sect called the Burning Sky sect. Emperor of Death, why did you invade my sect for no reason? A burly man shrouded in blue flames roared. The mountain gate of the Burning Heaven sect was filled with miserable screams. The Emperor of Death unleashed his shattered little world and sucked in the experts at the origin core realm and above. Tentacles of Death. The Emperor of Death's pitch-black eyes locked onto the burly male in blue flames. The latter's soul seemed to be frozen, and he couldn't resist at all. So, the tentacles of death wrapped around the burly male in blue flames and started to suck out his life force. Emperor of Death, stop. The sound of flying sounded from afar. 2 or 3 Void God Realm kings arrived one after another. One of them was a peak-tier king. She was an elegant and beautiful woman. The Emperor of Death was slightly surprised. He didn't expect reinforcements to arrive so quickly. So the Emperor of Death's whereabouts had been exposed when he slaughtered 2 1-star sects on the island. Between these 2-star sects, there were long-distance communication methods. Good. 3 or 4 Void God Realm kings and a peak-tier king should be enough for me to recover. The Emperor of Death roared into the sky. After saying this, he circulated the power of his little world of death and charged toward the kings. The skin of the burly male in blue flames started to wither as his life force started to leak. The expressions of the 3 changed dramatically, but they didn't hesitate to charge toward the Emperor of Death. The Emperor of Death was covered in injuries, and his little world had been shattered. Only then did they have the courage to fight. Emperor of Death, you shouldn't kill like this and make enemies everywhere. My brother is Emperor Luo Yu. I believe you've heard of him before. The woman in the palace robe was dignified and beautiful, charming but not bewitching. The Emperor of Death snickered coldly, you're full of fake morals. In the same situation, you people of the righteous Tao would probably be even more ruthless than me. The Emperor of Death wasn't an idiot, and he wouldn't make enemies everywhere. In fact, he understood this very well. Before he tried to take over another body, he had made too many enemies and was killed by the combined forces of several peak emperors. However, due to the situation, the Emperor of Death had to use extreme methods to recover from his injuries. This was the only way he could survive and turn things around in this death hunt. Bam! Boom! The 3 kings clashed with the Emperor of Death. The Emperor of Death easily crushed the 3 kings even though he was fighting 1 against 3. On top of that, he was also using the tentacles of death to absorb the life force of the Origin Core Realms and Void God Realm kings. The Emperor of Death was still holding back. If he made a mistake and killed these kings, he would lose his value. The Emperor of Death is still able to easily suppress us even though he's heavily injured. The expressions of the 3 kings were solemn. At the same time, the 3 of them were shocked. Just what kind of battles had the Emperor of Death gone through to the point where he had no other choice but to kill his clan to recover his strength? Right at this moment, the large male in blue flames was sucked away by the tentacles of death, and he turned into a pair of bones. It's your turn now. The Emperor of Death licked his lips. The tentacles of death were much more effective on Void God Realm kings. The hearts of the three kings went cold, and they started to think about retreating. Limitless death. The Emperor of Death laughed as a bottomless abyss appeared in his eye of death, and a lethal coldness enveloped the three kings. Arg! The three kings screamed as they fell into a limitless ocean of death. We've been hit by the eye of death's death illusion. The female in the dress exclaimed. However, no matter how the three kings struggled, they were unable to escape, and their souls were being corroded by the power of death. Tentacles of death. The Emperor of Death's figure appeared above the three kings, and tentacles of death wrapped around them. At the same time, in reality, the three kings were being wrapped around by the tentacles of death and were struggling. The female in the dress was barely able to wake up, but the Emperor of Death pressed his hand on her shoulder. The coldness of death even restricted her consciousness. So, this is the strength of an ancient peak emperor. The woman's beautiful face was pale, and her heart was filled with bitterness. Even though the Emperor of Death was injured and his little world had shattered, he wasn't someone they could deal with. Just as the three kings and the two-star faction were about to be slaughtered, whoosh. A streak of lightning that was as dazzling as a shooting star shot through the void sea and approached them. The aura of wind lightning from the destructive fire explosion shook heaven and earth. It's here so quickly. The Emperor of Death exclaimed as his hand on the female's shoulder froze. The woman in the palace dress revealed a trace of shock on her beautiful face. Then she saw a trace of hope in her heart. It all depended on the situation. The Emperor of Death was being chased by a terrifying expert, and he had to slaughter everyone to recover from his injuries. Whoosh! An invincible and sharp metal aura pierced through the air first. The female's face went white, and her soul started to tremble. The area she was in seemed to be locked down by some kind of power. It was as if she couldn't dodge no matter what she did. Whoosh! The female in the dress only felt blood splatter. A half-transparent scarlet-golden arrow of light pierced into the Emperor of Death's body. Mysterious symbols of lightning sparkled on the surface of the arrow, and it radiated an immortal and undying aura. The Emperor of Death let out a groan as a wave of pain came from his soul. The dark golden crown on his head released a golden light that was accompanied by a surge of soul power. That arrow contains a soul Dao attack. The female in the dress felt a coldness in her soul, as if she could hear 10,000 bolts of lightning exploding. The Emperor of Death's soul shook slightly as he was burned by the scarlet destruction wind lightning and God tribulation lightning. The female in the dress roared and used this chance to break free from the Emperor of Death's control. The other two kings also struggled, but they weren't as strong as the female in the dress, so they were trapped by the tentacles of death. Senior, save us. The female in the dress flew toward the approaching aura in despair. A male with scarlet golden wings appeared in the sky. He held the sky-locking bow, and his purple hair blew in the wind. His left eye was like purple lightning, and it seemed to be able to pierce through everything. It's him who chased the Emperor of Death all the way here. The female in the dress couldn't believe that the aura of life was so young. The aura of this person wasn't any weaker than the Emperor of Death, and he seemed to be even more confident. The important thing was, this person was completely unharmed. The identity of the pursuer was self-evident. Emperor of Death, I can't believe you used such a method to recover from your injuries. However, no matter what you do, the injuries caused by the God Tribulation lightning will not disappear, even if you die. Zhao Feng was first shocked, then his face turned cold under the God's spiritual eye. If it was an injury caused by a normal Great Emperor, then the Death Emperor would be able to heal most of it. However, an attack infused with the destruction profundity and divine tribulation lightning wasn't something that could be repaired so easily. Zhao Feng. Although my injuries haven't healed yet, my essence, qi, and spirit have recovered to their peak. Just the two of you alone aren't my match. The Emperor of Death laughed. He discovered that Zhao Feng's Yuan Qi had yet to fully recover. In order to chase after the Emperor of Death step by step and not give him a chance to catch his breath, Zhao Feng's Yuan Qi was slightly depleted as he chased after him. Chapter 750. Zhao Feng's yuan qi was indeed slightly depleted, and he wasn't at his peak. However, this was his strategy. He didn't want to give the Emperor of Death any chance to recover. Seeing that the tentacles of death were still entangled with the other two Void God Realm Kings, Zhao Feng didn't waste any more words and immediately attacked. A purple eye bloodline power surged from Zhao Feng's left eye and formed a bottomless purple whirlpool that connected to a misty purple world. A suction that targeted the soul came from the god's spiritual eye. You? The Emperor of Death's expression changed dramatically, and the purple and gold crown on his head released a unique undulation of soul power. The Void God Realm Kings in front of him and the experts from the two-star sects all felt their souls go cold, and they felt as if they were about to be dragged away. The closer they got to the Emperor of Death, the more uneasy and fearful they felt. The purple whirlpool in Zhao Feng's left eye became deeper and deeper, and a misty world appeared. On top of the gaze of death, there's also a unique illusionary eye technique. The Emperor of Death's heart shook. The gaze of death used the power of the soul to suck away the target soul. Under normal situations, the winner was decided by the soul. Apart from that, there were other factors such as strong intent, mastery of the soul Tao, and technique. Zhao Feng had used a profound technique called the Tao of Illusions. Zhao Feng specialized in the Tao of Illusions, and his eye bloodline started with the Tao of Illusions, including the illusion fish picture he had seen in the Broken Moon clan. After experiencing the Fan Luan ancient sound palace, Zhao Feng's understanding of the Tao of Illusions had reached a new level. According to wall painting Lu Qingxin, the highest level of the Tao of Illusions was reality. At this moment, Zhao Feng's gaze of the god eye didn't just suck away the soul. It also used the Tao of Illusions, making it even stronger. I'm the original creator of this move. How can a bastard like you do anything to me? The Emperor of Death's voice was filled with anger. However, he still needed to focus and use soul techniques to resist the gaze of the god eye. The gaze of the god eye that Zhao Feng had comprehended began to show signs of surpassing his master. This was because the medium through which Zhao Feng used this secret art, the ninth god eye, had an even greater advantage than his eye of death. What Zhao Feng lacked was the disparity in foundation. Run! The other two Void God Realm Kings used this chance to escape the tentacles of death with the help of the female. Hee. Only then did Zhao Feng's gaze of the god eye slowly stop. His true goal was to stop the Emperor of Death's tentacles of death and recover from his injuries. Heaven sealing 18 palms. The child demigod's body glowed with a golden light as the power of his sacred body crushed through the air. He thrust out golden palms that locked down the Emperor of Death. Scarlet gold eye flame. The instant the Emperor of Death was restricted, Zhao Feng's left eye released a scarlet gold light. A half-transparent scarlet gold flame landed on the Emperor of Death and roared through the mental energy and physical dimensions. This was the scarlet gold grade wind lightning eye flame that had merged with the power of God Tribulation lightning. The instant this flame was released, more than 300 wisps of God Tribulation lightning in Zhao Feng's purple soul sea lit up. The Emperor of Death screamed as his body was burned by the scarlet golden lightning fire. His body and soul felt like they were being bombarded. The scarlet golden eye flame contained the intent of destruction and the power of God Tribulation lightning, which was a great counter to his immortal death body. What affected him the most was his soul. This time, Zhao Feng's sky-locking bow and scarlet gold eye flame both focused on the soul. Scarlet gold wind lightning. This is the highest level of the wind lightning inheritance. Zhao Feng murmured in his heart. At this moment, his scarlet gold wind lightning had reached over 60% mastery. The scarlet gold eye flame that was formed from the essence of the scarlet gold wind lightning true fire was enough to severely injure most emperors. Mental energy spike. The instant the Emperor of Death revealed an opening, another purple crystal-like mental energy spike pierced into his soul. 1. The dark golden crown on the Emperor of Death's head released a dark light, making it look like a black lotus. However, the dark golden crown didn't have the ability to block the God Tribulation lightning. The scarlet golden eye flame contained the intent of destruction and the power of the God Tribulation lightning, which had damaged the crown to a certain degree. The Emperor of Death's soul was slightly injured, and this was on top of what he had suffered last time. Emperor of Death. Injuries to the soul are even harder to recover from. Zhao Feng's smile was slightly wicked. His yuan qi had been slightly depleted, but his main focus was on his soul attacks. The body and bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races gave Zhao Feng the ability to recover, so he wasn't afraid of a long battle. Dark Eye Death Flame. The power of death in the Emperor of Death's eyes turned into a forbidden black light that shot toward Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's heart went cold, and he felt a sense of death. The Emperor of Death rarely used soul attacks against Zhao Feng. This time, he was an exception. A layer of ice blue scales condensed on Zhao Feng's body, and a blue armor of ice appeared. A domain of ice that could freeze heaven and earth covered everything within 100 miles. Whoosh! The attack from the Dark Eye of Death landed on Zhao Feng's body and created a sizzling sound. At the same time, Zhao Feng's purple soul sea was being corroded by a wave of black flames. Boom! Zhao Feng's left eye shook, and the 300 wisps of God tribulation lightning within his purple soul sea released a power that could intimidate gods and ghosts. Boom! The blue lake in the center of the purple soul sea started to surge. Lightning and wind intertwined in the air above the soul sea. Emperor of Death, it's useless. The difference between our souls isn't very big. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. His god's spiritual eye was extremely resilient against soul attacks, and it still existed even against the Eye of Death. However, the prerequisite was that the difference between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death wasn't very big. Zhao Feng had the soul of an emperor, the advantage of the god's spiritual eye, and the power of the God tribulation lightning. In terms of foundation, there was still a gap between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death, but the strength of his soul wasn't any weaker. As I thought. The Emperor of Death wasn't surprised, and his expression became grim. He had to admit that he had met his nemesis. His biggest trump card, the Eye of Death, was suppressed by the ninth god's eye. Even his indestructible death body, which was a soul Dao power of the death system, was restrained by the god's tribulation lightning. Scarlet Golden Eye Flame. Mental Energy Spike. Zhao Feng counterattacked from afar. The child demigod was in between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death. He used the sky ceiling 18 palms just to restrict the Emperor of Death's movements and techniques. Boom! Shua! Under the fierce attacks of Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye, the Emperor of Death's face started to turn pale. In terms of mastery over the Tao of the soul, the Emperor of Death had the advantage. However, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye was at the level of a god's eye, and its potential was even more terrifying. More importantly, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye's defense against the Tao of the soul was extremely strong. In terms of physical defense, Zhao Feng had the 10,000 ancient races bloodline defense and the Ice Imperial Spear, so he was on par with the Emperor of Death. However, in terms of recovery, Zhao Feng had the advantage. The Emperor of Death's expression changed dramatically as he finally understood why Zhao Feng dared to chase after him. Zhao Feng wasn't scared even though his yuan qi hadn't fully recovered yet. This Zhao Feng's strength has basically reached the same level as mine. The only difference is our foundation. The Emperor of Death took a deep breath. This was a reality that he had to admit. Under the pressure of being chased by the Emperor of Death, Zhao Feng's growth had reached the peak of his life. Scythe of Death. A giant scythe surrounded by black mist appeared in the Emperor of Death's hand, and a terrifying power of death surrounded it. Death Force Field. A black force field appeared around him as he waved the Scythe of Death toward Zhao Feng and the child demigod. The expressions of Zhao Feng and the child demigod changed dramatically. The combination of the Scythe of Death and the Death Force Field could be said to be perfect in the physical dimension. The power of the attacks would be absorbed by the Death Force Field, or it would be boosted by the Scythe of Death. Scarlet Gold Wind Lightning. 100-yard-long scarlet gold spear appeared in Zhao Feng's hand, and it radiated an aura of destruction and God tribulation lightning. Ding! Ding! Boom! The scarlet gold spear and the Scythe of Death clashed in the air. Zhao Feng and the child demigod were forced to retreat. Sealing Yuan Palm. The child demigod used a secret technique as his palms spun, and a gray-gold circle of light enveloped the area around the Emperor of Death and restricted the flow of Yuan Qi. Rumble. The battle between the two parties caused the mountains and rivers near the two-star sect to collapse and be destroyed. The powerful shockwave made the expressions of the three nearby Void God Realm kings change dramatically. Who is that purple-haired male? He's chasing after the Emperor of Death? The female in the dress and the other two kings tried to maintain their distance. The Emperor of Death and the purple-haired male both used their eye bloodlines and soul techniques. Even in a battle on the material plane, he was one of the best among the great emperors. Death Instant Shadow. The Emperor of Death suddenly turned into a dark streak of light and charged out of the inner island. So fast. The female in the dress and the other three kings exclaimed. Lightning wings spatial flash. The wings of lightning behind Zhao Feng's back released a blinding light as he turned into a long arc of lightning and entered the outer dimension. His speed was obviously faster than the Emperor of Death's. The three kings were dumbfounded. When they finally reacted, they still had lingering fear in their hearts. That purple-haired youth seems to be called Zhao Feng. The number of experts that can chase after the Emperor of Death can be counted on one hand. Another expert has appeared in the Tsang Ocean. One had to know the strength of these three Void God Realm kings was even stronger than the Saint Moon Ant Goddess and the other three kings from the Tianlu Islands. Scarlet Gold Eye Flame. Sky-locking Bow. Zhao Feng flapped his wings and flashed through the air as he chased after the Emperor of Death. Within the limitless ocean, this pursuit of death crossed many island zones and islands. Wherever the two passed, heaven and earth would change color, and mountains would shatter. At the beginning, the Emperor of Death still had the ability to fight back, but several months later, he was covered in injuries and had to focus on defense. Slowly, this unparalleled battle shook the outer realms. An unparalleled mighty figure called Left-Eyed Heavenly Lord became famous in the Tsang Ocean. Chapter 751. Half a year later, within a void ocean spiritual palace in a large island zone, whoosh! A beam of light that looked like a dark shadow pierced through the air membrane and entered the spirit hall. On the street, a man with a broken right arm and a charred black body appeared. This male wore a dark golden crown that was covered in cracks, and there was a wisp of the aura of death around him that made everyone nearby feel uneasy. It was hard to imagine that this male was an ancient emperor from the Tsang Ocean. Emperor Zimu. The Emperor of Death murmured, but no one heard him. A few breaths later, an emperor's magnificent power appeared from a certain corner of the void ocean spiritual palace. Emperor of Death? The surprised voice of a male sounded in the air above the spiritual palace. They saw a purple-robed middle-aged man surrounded by a layer of purple light. A strange sandalwood scent came from where he stood. Emperor Zimu. The exclamations from the outside world sounded from within the void ocean spiritual palace, and their eyes were filled with respect. Void God Realm emperors were extremely rare outside of the sacred lands. However, this void ocean spiritual palace was located in a large-sized island zone, and there were 7 or 8 two-star sects here. This was why sending a Void God Realm emperor to guard the void ocean spiritual palace was understandable. Emperor of Death, how did you end up like this? Emperor Zimu was surprised. He had been in seclusion for the past year or two, so he didn't know what was going on in the outside world. Emperor Zimu, you owed me a favor several thousand years ago. Now, I need your help. The Emperor of Death said in a deep tone. He summarized the situation, but he didn't mention that Zhao Feng had the 9th God's Eye. The Pursuer is an expert that cultivates the Tao of lightning, and you're an emperor that specializes in wood. You can counter him. The Emperor of Death said in a solemn tone. Techniques countered each other. For example, the Emperor of Death was countered by Zhao Feng. However, it was impossible for Zhao Feng's scarlet gold wind lightning to not be countered. An emperor that specialized in wood could counter an emperor that specialized in the Tao of lightning. Who was that? How did he manage to chase you to this state? Could it be a sacred lord? Emperor Zimu was in disbelief. Don't worry, it's not a sacred lord. The pursuer is just a middle-stage void god realm cultivator, but his cultivation technique and bloodline are special. The Emperor of Death explained Zhao Feng's situation in detail. While the two of them were conversing, swish, swish, a bolt of lightning charged into the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace with the brutal aura of lightning fire destruction. The newcomer was a purple-haired man with a pair of golden wings on his back. So fast. Great Emperor Zimu was astonished, even though he knew that Zhao Feng was the successor of the Wind Lightning Great Emperor. Emperor of Death, do you think that I won't dare to attack you if you hide in the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace? The lightning wings on Zhao Feng's back flapped as he looked down from above. Over the past half a year, the Emperor of Death had been completely suppressed by him. The Emperor of Death's undying body and soul had been damaged by the God Tribulation Lightning, and his battle power had decreased by 30 to 40%. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Emperor Zimu secretly sized up Zhao Feng. The aura that Zhao Feng's Scarlet Gold Tempest emitted made him feel uneasy. Zhao Feng floated in the air. He obviously saw Emperor Zimu as well. Emperor Zimu was the same as Duanmu Qing. They were both emperors of the wood element. However, there was still a certain gap between Emperor Zimu and peak emperors. Emperor Zimu, you have to help me. If you can resolve this, I'll repay you tenfold in the future. The Emperor of Death's voice contained a hint of begging. Apart from Emperor Zimu, there were 2 other peak-tier kings and 4 domain-level kings. As long as Emperor Zimu was willing to help, the Emperor of Death had a high chance of survival. Left-eyed Heavenly Emperor. That purple-haired youth. A Void God Realm King and several Origin Core realms within the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace recognized Zhao Feng. As he chased Zhao Feng through many island zones, Zhao Feng's name was gradually made known to the higher-level experts. Left-eyed Heavenly Emperor? Emperor Zimu's eyes twinkled as he hesitated. At this moment, a king within the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace messaged him and told him about the situation between Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death. Emperor of Death, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. Apparently, you fought in the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace and are wanted by the Floating Dreams Sacred Land. Emperor Zimu took a deep breath and finally spoke. What? The Emperor of Death's figure flashed. Due to our past relationship, I won't take action against you, but the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace won't let you live either. Emperor Zimu's expression was solemn. The faint image of a purple and green little world appeared around him, and tried to merge with heaven and earth to suppress the Emperor of Death. The Emperor of Death's expression was ugly. Emperor Zimu's little world was purposely targeting him, but it didn't attack Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng floated in the air and looked at everything coldly. From the looks of it, the Emperor of Death wasn't willing to leave the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace and wanted to drag Emperor Zimu and the experts of the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace down with him. Emperor of Death, you won't be able to escape today. A scarlet golden flame appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye, and it spun endlessly. 1. Even Emperor Zimu and the other monarchs in the Spirit Palace felt a suffocating pressure as if a calamity was brewing in the air. No! The Emperor of Death felt a sense of danger. At the same instant, 700 to 800 wisps of God Tribulation lightning within Zhao Feng's purple soul sea were connected to each other, and they radiated an undying aura that countered everything. A half-transparent scarlet golden lightning fire landed on the Emperor of Death like a god's tribulation. Arg! The Emperor of Death screamed as the scarlet golden lightning fire on his immortal death body exploded and started to burn his soul dimension. He looked at the nightmarish figure in fear and despair. Only a breath or two later, the Emperor of Death's body was burnt beyond recognition, and his other arm was severed. Sii. Emperor Zimu couldn't help but take in a cold breath. The purple-haired male stood in the air with his hands behind his back and a relaxed expression. Within the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace, the other kings and Origin Core realms felt their hairs stand on end, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Too strong. So that's the left-eyed Heavenly Emperor. He beat the Emperor of Death to the point where he couldn't even fight back. The Void God Realm kings within the Spiritual Palace were stunned. Emperor of Death, The power of the God Tribulation lightning I've merged into is enough to threaten sacred lords. Even peak emperors won't be able to last more than 10 breaths against me. Zhao Feng said slowly. During the pursuit of death, Zhao Feng never stopped fusing with the God Tribulation lightning, even though the pursuit had stopped for more than half a year. And now he had absorbed 700 to 800 wisps of God Tribulation lightning in his purple soul sea, which was more than 100 times more than when he was at the pirate sacred land. Adding on the fact that Zhao Feng had unparalleled speed, he was now an unrivaled king below sacred lords. In the history of the Tao of Lightning, there was once a legendary prodigy who used the power of the God Tribulation lightning to reach the peak of the world. That legend came from an overwhelming prodigy from the continent zone, and he eventually became a god. It seemed like the legend was about to be replicated by Zhao Feng. God Tribulation lightning. Emperor Zimu's heart shook. He didn't choose to help the Emperor of Death at the start because he had thought about it carefully. Firstly, the Emperor of Death was wanted by the sacred land. Secondly, an expert that could chase after the Emperor of Death wasn't someone a normal emperor like him could offend. This was especially true after he found out that the person chasing after him was a genius of the new generation. The second reason was the main reason. Therefore, Emperor Zimu didn't want to help the Emperor of Death. Thinking about it now, Emperor Zimu felt that it was a wise choice. Even though Zhao Feng hadn't even greeted Emperor Zimu since he entered the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace, Emperor Zimu didn't even look at him. He didn't even look at him. At the start, Emperor Zimu was slightly displeased. But when Zhao Feng revealed his true strength, Emperor Zimu's heart went numb, and he broke out in cold sweat. It seemed like Zhao Feng didn't even care about his existence. One more emperor, or even a peak emperor, wouldn't be able to turn the situation around. Even a peak emperor wouldn't be able to last 10 breaths against Zhao Feng. That was close. Emperor Zimu didn't think that his Tao of Wood could block the power of the God Tribulation lightning. If he had made the wrong choice, he would have turned into a pile of ash. Emperor Zimu didn't have the Emperor of Death's indestructible body. I've lost. The Emperor of Death lay on the ground and said bitterly, "I'll accept your punishment. I'll accept your punishment." What kind of humiliation did he feel when he said those words? Even Emperor Zimu and the others shuddered. Accept my punishment? You won't resist if I want your life? Zhao Feng's gaze seemed to have the power to see through one's heart. He could see the humiliation and hatred in the Emperor of Death's heart. As long as he lived, he wouldn't let this go. Furthermore, the Emperor of Death's base was within the 10,000 forests spiritual zone. Who knew if he would gather other emperors or even mystic light realm sacred lords to deal with Zhao Feng after he lived? Zhao Feng, you should let people go when possible. The Death Emperor's face was filled with viciousness and a hint of threat. Zhao Feng's eyes were cold and emotionless. He had to kill the Emperor of Death. This thought had never wavered. However, Zhao Feng had to prevent the Emperor of Death from counterattacking before he died. After all, he was an ancient emperor that had lived for a long time and had the eyes of death. Then, let's die together. The Emperor of Death's expression twisted as he compressed the power of death into a single point and exploded. Not good, watch out. Emperor Zimu exclaimed. In a moment of desperation, he unleashed his little world to block the explosion that was enough to destroy the entire spiritual hall. The self-destruction of a great emperor was earth-shattering. Boom! The entire Void Ocean spiritual hall shook as it was enveloped by the flames of death. Emperor Zimu's little world instantly shattered, but it was only able to block 60% of the Emperor of Death's self-destruction. Emperor Zimu realized that the power of the self-destruction was 30 to 40% weaker than he had expected. Although the Void Ocean spiritual hall had turned into ruins, and more than half of the experts had died within, the Emperor of Death's little world didn't dare to underestimate him. Child's play. A youth with scarlet golden wings of lightning appeared in the limitless ocean like a god-fiend. Zhao Feng dodged the self-destruction with incredible speed. At the same time, his god's spiritual eye locked onto an unremarkable black line that was rapidly flying through the air. Upon closer inspection, it was a tattered origin soul, and a pair of pitch-black eyes of death appeared within it. Sky-locking bow, soul-locking. Zhao Feng pulled the dark silver bow in his hand, and a transparent arrow made of gold and silver shot through the air. The origin soul, which had just escaped a few hundred miles away, was pierced by the soul-locking light arrow. It was as if it had been nailed into the void and was struggling with all its might. Chapter 752. So that's how it is. Within the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace, Emperor Zimu looked at Zhao Feng's actions and the pinned Yuan soul in the air. No wonder the Emperor of Death's self-destruction wasn't as strong as expected. The Void God realm was a transformation of the soul, and emperors had reached the peak of the Void God realm. For people like the Emperor of Death, their biggest asset was their soul. However, it was his bad luck to meet Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's eye bloodline was also a soul type, and he had the sky-locking bow. Zhao Feng didn't let his guard down even after nailing the Emperor of Death's Yuan soul in one shot. Master! The child demigod suddenly appeared. Zhao Feng looked curiously at the child demigod. What did this little fellow suggest? The Emperor of Death's Eye of Death can be inherited through the soul. Master, can you help me steal this eye bloodline? The child demigod asked. He walked the path of a body-type cultivator, so the Tao of the soul was his weakness. However, if the child demigod could obtain the Eye of Death and use it with the Golden Kuan sacred body, it would be a perfect combination. The Eye of Death? Zhao Feng felt his eye bloodline twitch as if it was excited. In the air, there was a pair of black eyes on the pinned Yuan soul that was in between the soul and the physical body. It was similar to Zhao Feng's God Eye leaving his body. He had a feeling that the Eye of Death would be useful to him as well. Meow meow. The little thieving cat also popped its head out and waved its paws as it said something to Zhao Feng. This thieving cat? The child demigod gritted his teeth. The little thieving cat was trying to persuade Zhao Feng not to give the Eye of Death to Zhao Feng. Meow. The little thieving cat's suggestion was to kill the Emperor of Death immediately. Zhao Feng, if I die, you won't be able to live either. His soul, which had been frozen by the soul-locking light arrow, suddenly burst into flames, summoning a majestic and shocking death energy. Not good. The expressions of Zhao Feng and the others, who were approaching, changed drastically as they sensed danger. One had to know that the Emperor of Death's soul was unrivaled amongst emperors. In terms of mastery over the Tao of the soul, he surpassed some sacred lords. Meow. The little thieving cat reacted quickly and entered Zhao Feng's ancient metal ring. The child demigod wanted the Eye of Death and was caught off guard. Boom. The whole world was enveloped in darkness by the power of death that was similar to the death force field. The difference was that this power was more focused on the soul. Ah! The child demigod screamed as his soul aura extinguished, and his body fell into the limitless ocean. Zhao Feng's soul sea world also shook, suffering from the backlash of an emperor-level soul explosion. The backlash was enough to severely injure the soul of a mystic light realm's sacred lord. Even someone as strong as Zhao Feng let out a muffled groan. Although his god's spiritual eye could resist soul attacks, it was only relative. If a soul attack was too strong, even the god's spiritual eye wouldn't be able to resist it. Little thieving cat, child demigod? Zhao Feng exclaimed. The little thieving cat reacted quickly and dodged the attack. Hiding inside the ancient metal ring was like entering another dimension, and there was also the protection of Zhao Feng's soul. As for the child demigod, Zhao Feng couldn't feel his soul aura anymore. A pair of black eyes turned into a blurry blur that was already 10,000 miles away. The Eye of Death and the intent of death. Zhao Feng's expression became grim. He didn't expect the Emperor of Death to have such a trick up his sleeve. 95% of the Emperor of Death's soul power had been destroyed in the self-explosion just now. However, his core memories and intent of death were stored in the Eye of Death. The Eye of Death's flying speed was extremely fast. It was in between the physical and soul states, and it was much faster than Zhao Feng's lightning wings spatial flash. This was because the speed of a normal Yuan soul would be more than 10 times faster than normal. The Emperor of Death's current state was 3 to 5 times faster than normal. Let's see how long you can last. Zhao Feng decided that he couldn't let the Emperor of Death go. Killing the Emperor of Death would be too easy. Lightning wings spatial flash. A pair of scarlet golden wings spread behind Zhao Feng's back as he flashed 10,000 miles away. He wasn't worried that the Emperor of Death would be able to escape. This was because over 95% of the Emperor of Death's soul power had been destroyed in the self-explosion, so he couldn't fly for long. The Emperor of Death only has one path of survival. Zhao Feng's heart was clear. With his body destroyed and his soul destroyed, the Emperor of Death's only path of survival was to steal someone else's body. In reality, the Emperor of Death had stolen someone else's body twice and was very experienced. However, this time, the difficulty was the highest, and the success rate was the lowest. Even the self-explosion didn't do much damage to Zhao Feng. His eye bloodline specializes in tracking, and his speed is unparalleled. The Emperor of Death's intent cursed in his heart. If it were a normal sacred lord, the Emperor of Death would have been able to escape after 2 self-explosions. The shadow of the Death God and 2 self-explosions were enough to make normal sacred lords suffer. Unfortunately, the Emperor of Death's advantage in soul power was completely countered by Zhao Feng. An hour later, the Eye of Death widened the distance between it and Zhao Feng. At this moment, the majority of its eye bloodline power had been used up, and it was flying toward a densely populated island. I can still rise again after stealing someone else's body. The Emperor of Death saw the light of new life. He didn't need to worry too much about talent if he stole someone else's body with the Eye of Death. A while later, within the imperials of a great country on an island, a dark streak flashed by. Without reaching the origin core realm, it was impossible to detect its existence. Very good. I've stolen the body of an imperial prince. The Emperor of Death was overjoyed. The strength of this great country was on par with the Canopy Great Country, so it wouldn't be easy to detect it. If it was a 1-star or 2-star sect, it would be dangerous. However, the identity of an imperial prince was a good springboard. If he entered a 1-star or 2-star sect in the future, he would have endless resources. It wouldn't take much effort. The Emperor of Death successfully took over the body of a prince that was ignored by the Emperor. More accurately speaking, it was an illegitimate child. Even if you're trash, I'll make you go against the heavens. The Emperor of Death started to merge with the memories of this body after taking over the body. At the same time, he used a secret technique to conceal his aura. Just in case, the Emperor of Death walked out of the imperial palace and entered a quiet forest on a carriage. Suddenly, the Emperor of Death's figure froze. A purple-haired youth sat in the forest and roasted a wild boar with the thieving cat next to him. The aroma of the wild boar caused the Emperor of Death's starving body to subconsciously swallow his saliva. Zhao Feng. Forgive people when possible. The Emperor of Death's breathing quickened, and his eyes were filled with despair. Apart from his powerful intent, he probably wasn't even a match for someone at the true spirit realm. Zhao Feng expressionlessly took a bite of the roasted meat and inspected the Emperor of Death's new body. Once one became a Void God Realm King, it would be extremely easy to take over a body. Zhao Feng opened his left eye, and a cold intent covered the Emperor of Death's soul. Zhao Feng was very interested in the Emperor of Death's soul Dao secret technique and the Eye of Death. Zhao Feng, if I die, you won't have a good death either. I've already set up the cursed words of death. The Emperor of Death's expression was grim and threatening. After all, he couldn't fight back against Zhao Feng. If he had to die, he wouldn't let Zhao Feng off easily. Cursed words of death? Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. He had studied the secret tome of death before, but he only knew a little about the cursed words of death. The cursed words of death were the most terrifying and difficult to break curse. This was because the price of this curse was death. The cursed words of death originate from a forbidden race of the 10,000 ancient races, the Ancient Witch race. This race is ranked even higher than the Heaven's Legacy race and is only below the Ancient race. The Emperor of Death's expression became colder. Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly, but the intent to kill the Emperor of Death didn't change. Not only did he want to kill the Emperor of Death, he also wanted to torture him and steal his Eye of Death. Huh? The Emperor of Death laughed in despair as he circulated his intent, causing his consciousness and soul to explode. His opponent was so cold and decisive that even the cursed words of death couldn't scare him away. Not good. Zhao Feng wanted to stop him, but it was too late. He didn't expect the Emperor of Death to choose to commit suicide at the last moment. The Emperor of Death's consciousness wasn't the only thing that was destroyed. The Eye of Death was also destroyed. With my death as the price, I will leave behind a nightmare of death that will wither and deteriorate endlessly for those I hate and kill. A mysterious voice pierced through the cycle of reincarnation. The Emperor of Death was already dead. The Emperor of Death's consciousness wasn't the only thing that was destroyed. The Eye of Death was also destroyed. The stronger the carrier of death was, the more powerful it would be. Theoretically speaking, the power of the cursed words of death had irreversible effects on powerhouses that were 2 ranks higher than the user. This was also why normal sacred lords didn't want to offend the Emperor of Death. He was an ancient emperor that knew all kinds of forbidden techniques. Plop. The body that the Emperor of Death had taken over fell to the ground. Sii. Zhao Feng groaned as he felt an incomprehensible power surround his body and seep into his soul. A painful and itchy feeling crawled into Zhao Feng's heart. He opened his god's spiritual eye. Zhao Feng could barely sense that wisps of black and blood-colored light had seeped into every cell in his body and even eroded his soul. The origin of these wisps of black and blood-colored light couldn't be explained. The way they existed couldn't be explained. This power was similar to the power of the cursed ghost corpses, but it was countless times stronger. The cursed words of death. This forbidden technique actually exists? Zhao Feng took a deep breath. The instant he was hit, he felt as if his entire body was covered in worms. At this moment, Zhao Feng felt his soul, body, and true yuan start to slowly regress. Luckily, his mystic ice-scaled race bloodline and God's spiritual eye had a certain level of resistance against the cursed words of death. If it were a normal king, the speed at which their soul would regress would be 10 times or even dozens of times faster than Zhao Feng's. After sitting for half a day, Zhao Feng couldn't do anything against the cursed words of death. He couldn't explain how the power of the cursed words of death existed, and he couldn't affect it with his own power. I don't understand this cursed words of death at all. I should go back to the Azure Flower continent first. Maybe the 6 Warlock Divine Sage can give me some hints. Zhao Feng made a decision as his thoughts spun. Chapter 753. In the depths of the limitless ocean Gulu. The sound of bubbles could be heard, and the sound of coughing could be heard. A few breaths later, a pale-faced child of 3 or 4 years of age appeared in the limitless ocean. He didn't die? The imprint on the dark heart seed disappeared. Could the Emperor of Death's soul have self-destructed? The child murmured to himself as he stood in the air. The child demigod's soul had been instantly destroyed by the self-destruction of the Emperor of Death, and his consciousness had been destroyed. At that moment, his vision went black, and he faked his death and fell into the limitless ocean. Even he thought that his soul had been destroyed, and the dark heart seed had disappeared as well. At this moment in time, the child demigod barely survived, but his soul was almost destroyed, and his aura was extremely weak. It's all thanks to the Golden Kuan sacred body that a part of my consciousness is imprinted in my sacred body. The child demigod murmured. When the Golden Kuan sacred body was cultivated to the late stages, it would also merge the soul with the physical body. After reaching a certain level, as long as the physical body wasn't destroyed, the soul wouldn't be destroyed easily. At this moment in time, a void ocean ship was flying over from this direction. Grandpa, what's that? A girl in a flowery dress looked at a pale-faced child. Huh? The child floated in the air and laughed wickedly. The demigod Kuan Yun will definitely rise again and shock the Tsang Ocean. In this unassuming corner, the demigod Kuan Yun had broken through his shackles and regained his freedom. What kind of change would the unrestrained demigod Kuan Yun bring to the world? Shwa. The child demigod's figure flashed and disappeared. In the next instant, cries and pleas could be heard coming from within the ship. From now on, I'm the captain of this ship. Anyone who disobeys me will be killed. The child demigod's powerful sacred body suppressed everyone present. On this ship, The strongest peak supremacy was just like an ant in front of him. After taking control of the ship, the child demigod immediately gave the order to fly in a certain direction. The child demigod knew that he definitely wasn't Zhao Feng's match. At the end of the pursuit of death, the strength that Zhao Feng displayed could threaten Mystic Light Realm's sacred lords. The child demigod decided to use his new identity and find a remote place to recover his cultivation to the Mystic Light Realm. Otherwise, anyone below the Mystic Light Realm would be doomed if they met Zhao Feng. Thinking about the master who had enslaved him for many years, the child demigod was filled with hatred and fear. For the time being, he didn't dare to think about revenge. Saving his own life was the most important thing. The ship looked inconspicuous as it left Emperor Zimu's Void Ocean spiritual palace. No one noticed that there was a small child in the ship. The child demigod was very smart. He didn't fly with his own abilities to avoid leaving any traces. He used the void ship to escape. Over the past half a year of pursuit, he had a very good understanding of Zhao Feng's tracking methods and had already come up with various countermeasures. Half a day later, a slightly haggard purple-haired young man tore through the air and flew into the void sea. This should be where the Emperor of Death's soul self-destructed. Zhao Feng murmured. A silver-gray thieving cat sat on his shoulder. Zhao Feng opened his god's spiritual eye and inspected the limitless ocean. A while later, Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly. He didn't find the child demigod's body. He clearly remembered that the child demigod's soul had been destroyed by the Emperor of Death's self-destruction, and even the Dark Heart Seed had disappeared. If the target's soul was destroyed, the Dark Heart Seed and the Dark Heart Seal would naturally dissipate and lose their connection. Could it be that the child demigod didn't die and managed to dissolve the Dark Heart Seed in that self-destruction? Zhao Feng's thoughts spun. If this was the worst-case scenario, then the child demigod's luck was too good. In comparison, Zhao Feng was much more unlucky. He had been hit by the Emperor of Death's cursed words of death. The cursed words of death were extremely unique. It would activate if Zhao Feng killed the person using it or if the person using it committed suicide. This was because this curse had been set up before the person died. As long as the Emperor of Death died, the person he hated the most would be hit by the cursed words of death. No matter how far away they were, they couldn't avoid it. Therefore, Zhao Feng wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. Unless he didn't kill the Emperor of Death. However, even if he had a second chance, Zhao Feng still wanted to kill the Emperor of Death. He had never experienced such humiliation after being chased for 7 years. Furthermore, as long as the Emperor of Death didn't die, he would be a source of danger. After he was defeated, he might collude with other peak emperors or even Mystic Light Realm sacred lords to obtain the 9th God's Eye. Therefore, Zhao Feng didn't regret his decision at all. The disappearance of the child demigod was purely an accident. As for what the demigod Zhao Feng would do to the Tsang Ocean, Zhao Feng couldn't be bothered to take responsibility for it. Damn it. The more I circulate my true yuan, the more obvious the power of decay becomes. The itchy and painful feeling in Zhao Feng's body didn't stop. He even sealed his body in ice, but there was no effect. The cursed words of death came from the ancient witch race, which was ranked second among the 10,000 ancient races. This race was extremely mysterious, and their research in the Tao of the soul surpassed the past and present. In the primordial age, witchcraft and curses were absolutely terrifying powers that all the major races were terrified of. The stronger the host of the cursed words of death, the more effective they would be. The Emperor of Death was an emperor, and with the Eye of Death as its host, even demigods wouldn't be able to survive the cursed words of death. Zhao Feng spread his wings of lightning and landed in the nearby Void Ocean Spiritual Palace. Left-eyed Heavenly Emperor. The Void Ocean Spiritual Palace was in ruins, and Emperor Zimu was dealing with the aftermath. Zhao Feng's arrival made many people, including Emperor Zimu, tremble. Can you use the teleportation array? Zhao Feng asked. The teleportation array is protected by a powerful array, so it's safe. Emperor Zimu had a respectful expression. Zhao Feng chatted with Emperor Zimu for a bit and told him why he was here. Emperor Zimu let out a sigh of relief after learning that the Emperor of Death had been successfully killed. If the Emperor of Death wasn't dead, he would definitely remember him. Brother Zhao, don't worry. I'll help you with the teleportation array, including the one at the Floating Dreams Sacred Land. Emperor Zimu was very friendly. He obviously wanted to get on the good side of a super expert like Zhao Feng, who had limitless potential. He didn't think too much about how weak Zhao Feng was. After all, the Emperor of Death was a nightmarish emperor in the Tsang Ocean. Killing him would obviously cost a lot. Great Emperor Zimu was a fence-sitter who fawned on those in power. In the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace, he tried to get on the good side of Zhao Feng and even gave him gifts. He even paid for the primal crystal stones to use the teleportation array. Half a month later, with Emperor Zimu's help, Zhao Feng arrived at the Floating Dreams Sacred Land. When he arrived at the Floating Dreams Sacred Land, several 2-star sects and even 3-star sects invited Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng was neither overbearing nor servile as he rejected all of them. From the Floating Dreams Sacred Land, Zhao Feng used the teleportation array to go to the true martial Sacred Land. In order to get on the good side of Zhao Feng, Emperor Zimu once again paid a huge sum of primal crystal stones for Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng happened to be lacking primal crystal stones, so he'd benefited from it. Emperor Zimu was overjoyed. Zhao Feng had accepted his help and benefits, which meant that Zhao Feng owed him a favor. Before he left, Emperor Zimu asked where Zhao Feng was staying. Zhao Feng told him the Mystic True Sacred Clan, but he didn't mention the Azure Flower Continent. In the Tsang Ocean, there were 3 spiritual zones, and who knew how many islands there were? Zhao Feng didn't mention the Azure Flower Continent when he was fighting outside. Even the Emperor of Death and the child demigod didn't know where Zhao Feng was born. Zhao Feng did this because he didn't want to bring trouble to his hometown. When I have time, I'll go to the Mystic True Sacred Clan and find Brother Zhao. Emperor Zimu sent Zhao Feng off. He didn't expect that Zhao Feng didn't plan on staying at the Mystic True Sacred Clan. After returning to the true martial Sacred Land with Zhao Feng's Void God Realm cultivation, he could obviously use the Spiritual Zone Array. However, Zhao Feng didn't directly teleport to the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace in the Azure Islands Zone or the neighboring Tianlu Islands Zone. This teleportation, Zhao Feng returned to the eternally sealed Void Ocean Spiritual Palace. Back then, the reason why Zhao Feng was able to enter the true martial Sacred Land and meet Duan Muqing was because of the eternally sealed Palace Lord's help. Not long after, Zhao Feng met the eternally sealed Palace Lord. The younger generation will surpass us in time. In just a few years, you've already become a king of the new generation. The eternally sealed Palace Lord sighed. Zhao Feng felt bitter, but he couldn't say it. The cursed words of death were probably the strongest curse in the Tsang Ocean. Luckily, over the past few days, Zhao Feng tried his best to conceal his aura and not use his true yuan or soul power to prevent his cultivation from weakening. The god's spiritual eye and the ice-scaled race bloodline had an instinctive power that could suppress the power of the curse. If it wasn't for this, Zhao Feng would probably have become a withered old man, and his cultivation would have dropped to the origin core realm. Zhao Feng stayed in the eternally sealed Void Ocean Spiritual Palace for a few days. In order to thank the eternally sealed Palace Lord, Zhao Feng once again gave him a few peak treasures, such as the Immortal Springs wine, purple scaled grass, and some other treasures he had taken from other kings. Among them, the most precious was a spiritual fruit from the ancient dream realm. Zhao Feng could see that the eternally sealed Palace Lord's cultivation was infinitely close to a Void God Realm king. These peak treasures could help him become a king. Zhao Feng stayed in the eternally sealed Void Ocean Spiritual Palace for a few days before leaving. 1 month later, Azure Islands Zone, Azure Flower Continent, whoosh. A bolt of lightning streaked across the sky like a gorgeous shooting star. A shallow crater was left where Zhao Feng landed. Where is this? Although Zhao Feng was born in the Azure Flower Continent, there were many places he had never been to before. He first checked the aura of his soul and body. Unknowingly, his cultivation had dropped to the early stages of the Void God Realm. Shwa. Zhao Feng then flew into the air and looked down at the terrain below, which matched the map of the Azure Flower Continent. Western Continent, Thousand Desert Great Country. Zhao Feng quickly determined where he was going to land. Skeletal Division Leader. Zhao Feng slowly spoke as a dark mist spread around him, and a silver-white skeleton appeared. Its eyes were red. After being changed by the Heaven's Legacy City, the Skeletal Division leader's appearance had changed a lot. Master, we're at the Azure Flower Continent? The Skeletal Division leader was overjoyed as it sensed the familiar aura from the ground. Chapter 754. Skeletal Division Leader, when I just arrived at the Azure Flower Continent, I could feel that the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's forces are reviving. Zhao Feng's eyes flashed. With his senses as a Void God Realm King, he could sense the slight changes in the aura of the Azure Flower Continent even if he didn't use his divine sense. A transparent scarlet blood-colored token appeared in the Skeletal Division leader's hand, and it closed its eyes to sense it. Master, in the Western Continent alone, I can sense several Scarlet Moon higher-ups. The Skeletal Division leader was slightly surprised. The Skeletal Division leader admired Zhao Feng from the bottom of its heart. If it had to choose between the Scarlet Moon religion and Zhao Feng, the Skeletal Division leader would definitely choose Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng thought for a moment and said, I'll leave the task of reorganizing the Scarlet Moon demonic religion to you. Yes, Master. The Skeletal Division leader bowed as its eyes were filled with shock and excitement. Clearly, Zhao Feng was trying to push him to take control of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion and turn the enemy into his own. Rather than going on a killing spree, it was better to take in the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. In fact, Zhao Feng's main goal in returning to the Azure Flower Continent was to find the 6 Warlock Sage to resolve his own problems. As for the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, he was just going to deal with it, so he left it to the Skeletal Division leader. Furthermore, Zhao Feng wanted to avoid fighting as much as possible in order to reduce the decline of his cultivation. After these days, Zhao Feng had a certain understanding of the characteristics of the cursed words of death. It wasn't just Zhao Feng's cultivation that was declining. His body, soul, and even his lifespan were declining. Of course, Zhao Feng also had the cursed words of death on him, a forbidden area that was difficult to erode. The first was the God's spiritual eye. Although the God's spiritual eye's eye bloodline power was weakening, it was still able to block out the cursed words of death. The blue eye bloodline lake in the center of the Soul Sea world was connected to the ancient dream realm. The second was the divine tribulation lightning. The cursed words of death couldn't penetrate the purple Soul Sea where the God tribulation lightning was being absorbed. It could be said, these were the 2 main taboos on Zhao Feng. Apart from that, even the bloodline of the profound ice-scaled race could not avoid it. If it wasn't for this factor, I could have found another quiet place to cultivate the 5 elemental wind lightning technique and the Golden Kuan's sacred lightning body after I returned to the Azure Flower Continent. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. The Golden Kuan's sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique appeared in his mind. Zhao Feng's own wind and thunder inheritance had basically been cultivated to the peak. Cultivating the wind lightning inheritance to the Void God realm was the limit. They might be able to barely break through to the mystic light realm, but they wouldn't be able to cultivate any further. As for the Golden Kuan's sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique, they could both be cultivated to the heavenly divine realm after being fused with a few ancient sage cultivation techniques. Cultivation techniques that could allow one to cultivate to the heavenly divine realm were extremely rare in this world. However, these 2 techniques were a complete set, and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique was needed to refine the sacred lightning body. However, the problem was after cultivating Zhao Feng's wind and lightning inheritance to its current level, it walked a completely different path than the 5 elemental wind lightning technique. In order to cultivate the 5 elemental wind lightning technique, Zhao Feng had to recultivate it. According to the original plan, after Zhao Feng dealt with the danger of death, he would recultivate it. After all, the wind and lightning inheritance had reached the peak, and the other 2 techniques had more potential. At most, it would take 10 years for Zhao Feng to recover his strength. However, Zhao Feng didn't expect the Emperor of Death to have the cursed words of death. The cursed words of death would activate as soon as the user died. It was unavoidable. Right now, the problem that Zhao Feng was worried about was that the cursed words of death would still follow him even if he recultivated it. Master, I've sensed that the upper echelon of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion is doing something big in the northeast. The skeletal division leader's voice broke Zhao Feng's thoughts. Let's go. Zhao Feng didn't hesitate. After all, this direction led to the northern continent. The skeletal division leader led the way and flew toward a desert in the northeast. A while later, Zhao Feng and the skeletal division leader arrived in the clouds. Below, a fierce battle was unfolding in a gravel mountain range. Jiji, you accomplices of the Sacred Alliance have finally fallen into the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's net. 3 upper echelon members of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion floated in the air. The one in the middle was a sharp-mouthed old man with bat wings on his back. He had a cunning and complacent look on his face. On his left and right was a black-robed sovereign and a white-faced female. They were attacking the experts below. Several hundred elites of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion surrounded them. It's one of the 4 protectors of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, the Batwing King. The skeletal division leader revealed a weird expression. The black-robed sovereign was one of the former division leaders of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, and the female was probably new. Below, a black-robed sword sovereign and a middle-aged giant at the half-step origin core realm were locked in a tough battle. The black-robed sword sovereign's attacks were like lightning, and his battle power was close to the peak small origin core realm. Unfortunately, he was the only venerable one below. Mystic Sword Sovereign. Zhao Feng immediately recognized the identity of this sovereign. Zhao Feng had a deep impression of this Mystic Sword Sovereign. The first sovereign Zhao Feng saw in the Canopy Great Country was this Mystic Sword Sovereign. At that time, it was this sovereign who bought the incomplete 7-sword sword technique. This person was one of the 9 sovereigns in the sacred True Dragon Gathering. Mystic Sword Sovereign, Ashur Yuntian, have harmed you. Even if I have to risk my life, I will protect you and fight my way out. The middle-aged giant had a layer of stone skin around him. Although he was only at the half-step origin core realm, his body and bloodline were extremely strong, and his defense could block the attacks of normal sovereigns. Zhao Feng felt that this middle-aged giant was familiar. Father, if we die together. In the rear of the crowd, a young man who was as tall as copper and iron shook the devil cult elites who were besieging him until they vomited blood. Indeed worthy of being one of the overwhelming prodigies of the sacred True Dragon Gathering. Everyone watch out for his gravity. Several true Lord rank experts of the demonic cult were beating up the giant youth. Shi Qingtian. Zhao Feng's eyes locked onto the bronze-skinned young man. Shi Yuntian? Shi Qingtian? Zhao Feng instantly understood that the giant youth was Shi Qingtian's father. Shi Qingtian's cultivation had reached the peak true Lord rank, and his battle power was comparable to the half-step origin core realm. It's useless. There are 3 sovereigns, and one of them is one of the 4 protectors, the Batwing Lord. The Mystic Sword Sovereign smiled bitterly. The Batwing Lord's cultivation was not only at the peak small origin core realm, his bloodline was also famous for his speed. No one present could escape from the Batwing Lord. At this point in time, the Batwing Lord only watched from the sky and didn't do anything. Just the elites led by the other 2 sovereigns were able to beat the Mystic Sword Sovereign and the Shi family to the point where they couldn't fight back at all. Which upper echelon is it? The Batwing Lord suddenly sensed something and looked toward the clouds. Shwa. Between the clouds, 2 figures floated down. One was a silver-white skeleton, and the other was an expressionless purple-haired youth. Division Leader Yogu. Division Leader Yogu. Didn't you disappear a few years ago? The Batwing Lord and the black-robed sovereign recognized the skeletal division leader. Although the skeletal division leader's appearance had changed, it was still recognized by the upper echelon. Scarlet Moon division leader. Another supremacy has come. Down below, the mysterious sword venerable and the experts of the Shi family felt their hearts skip a beat. Zhao Feng. Shi Qingtian, who was bathed in blood, saw Zhao Feng out of the corner of his eye and almost tripped. It all depended on the situation. Zhao Feng stood shoulder to shoulder with the upper echelon of the demonic religion. They seemed to know each other very well. Zhao Feng, you've joined the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Shi Qingtian roared. Zhao Feng. The mystic sword sovereign exclaimed. He obviously remembered the shining star from the Sacred Alliance. In his memory, Zhao Feng was the deputy patriarch of the Iron Blood religion, but he hadn't heard any news about him. Why would the former overwhelming prodigy join the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Zhao Feng? The overwhelming prodigy king of the last sacred true dragon gathering. Skeletal division leader, you actually managed to recruit such an overwhelming prodigy. Those from the Scarlet Moon demonic religion had weird expressions. At this point in time, the battle paused for a short while. Another sovereign from the Scarlet Moon demonic religion had arrived. The Mystic Sword Sovereign and those from the Sure family fell into despair. Furthermore, the fact that the former overwhelming prodigy had joined the Scarlet Moon demonic religion was a huge blow. Batwing Lord, the skeletal division leader said emotionlessly, I'm here under Master's orders to subdue the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. After speaking, it bowed faintly and looked at the purple-haired youth next to it. What? Master? Subdue the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Division leader Yogu, did you take the wrong medicine? The Bat Lord and the others were taken aback and berated angrily. The Mystic Sword Sovereign, Shi Qingtian, and company were dazed. What was going on? Had the Scarlet Moon demonic religion started fighting amongst themselves? Of course, this kind of situation was something they were happy to see happen. It gave them a chance to catch their breath. The skeletal division leader snickered coldly and released a power of the Tao of Bone. The Batwing Lord and the other upper echelon felt as if their bones were being crushed by a 1,000,000-kilogram boulder. What? The Batwing Lord spat out a mouthful of blood. Plop, plop. The bones of the other two sovereigns cracked as they fell to the ground. Division leader Yogu. The Batwing Lord's face was bright red as he looked at the skeletal division leader in fear. On the battlefield, there was a deathly silence on both sides. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. This sudden change made everyone not know what to do. An indescribable aura suddenly descended with the skeletal division leader at the center. Both sides were suppressed by the terrifying power of the world. Those below the origin core realm couldn't even move or breathe. Sovereign Lord. The Batwing Monarch's face was filled with shock as he was pressed to the ground by the massive aura of heaven and earth. There are less than 5 sovereign lords in the entire Azure Flower continent. The Mystic Sword Sovereign took in a cold breath. Instinct told him that the skeletal division leader wasn't just a sovereign lord. The Mystic Sword Sovereign had seen sovereign lords before, but their aura wasn't as strong as the skeletal division leaders. Master, what should we do with these people? The skeletal division leader respectfully asked Zhao Feng after suppressing everyone with its strength. Chapter 755. Master? Seeing the skeletal division leader's respectful expression, the Batwing King, the Mystic Sword Sovereign, and company were stunned. Only now did they realize that the expressionless purple-haired youth was the skeletal division leader's master. Zhao Feng. The Mystic Sword Sovereign, Shi Qingtian, and company were speechless. From the moment he appeared until now, Zhao Feng stood next to the skeletal division leader and didn't say anything. His nonchalant appearance made him completely ignored. Until this moment, the skeletal division leader asked respectfully. Everyone's gazes landed on the most dazzling prodigy of the continent. Skeletal division leader. Zhao Feng said unhappily, I've already given you the task of subduing the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Are you going to ask me for instructions on every little thing? Yes. The skeletal division leader couldn't help but hiccup and curse itself for being dumb. Thinking about what Zhao Feng had experienced in the outside world, the little Qinghua continent and the Scarlet Moon demonic religion weren't even worth mentioning. It had already felt that Zhao Feng wasn't interested in the Scarlet Moon demonic religion and threw it to it. As a servant, he had accepted his master's request, so he should do his best to complete these tasks. It's just a trivial matter. The faces of the Mystic Sword Sovereign and company couldn't help but twitch. The Batwing King and company looked at each other with shock. In Zhao Feng's eyes, this battle between the sovereigns of the continent was child's play and not worth mentioning. None of the sovereigns present could see through Zhao Feng's cultivation. In fact, Zhao Feng even seemed a little sickly. Batwing King, the three of you only have two choices. Obey me or die. The skeletal division leader laughed and turned its gaze. It had listened to Zhao Feng for a long time, and now it was acting like a division leader again. You dare to betray the patriarch. The white-faced female gritted her teeth and said, that. The skeletal division leader's eyes were bloodshot. Boom. A dark silver bone hand with a huge bone shadow slammed down from the void, directly crushing the pale-faced woman into a meat patty. The pale-faced woman didn't even have time to scream before she was slapped to death. The experts from both sides sucked in a cold breath and shuddered. Too strong. This skeletal division leader is at least at the peak Great Origin Core realm. Apart from the Scarlet Moon Patriarch, probably no one in the Azure Flower continent can deal with it. The Batwing Monarch and the other black-robed sovereign were horrified. If the skeletal division leader's strength was already so monstrous, then what level had its master, Zhao Feng, reached? After weighing the pros and cons, the two upper echelons of the Crimson Moon Empire decided to temporarily yield. As for the rest, most of the elites of the Scarlet Moon religion chose to surrender. However, there were a few Scarlet Moon religion elites who tried to escape from the outer circle. Boom, boom. The Scarlet Moon elites had only managed to escape half a mile before an invisible will descended from the sky and annihilated their souls. Foe God will. It's at least a half-step king will. This has only appeared on the head. The faces of the Batwing Monarch and company went white. They were originally planning something, but after seeing the skeletal division leader's true cultivation, they couldn't help but feel lucky. A while later, the skeletal division leader took in the elites of the Scarlet Moon religion, including the two sovereigns. In the Azure Flower continent, sovereigns were at the Origin Core realm, and there were very few of them. Those at the True Lord rank were all giants. As for Great Origin Core realm sovereign lords, they could be counted on one hand. This was due to the environment of the Azure Flower continent. Even the nearby two-star sects didn't have many sovereign lords. The skeletal division leader's cultivation could barely enter the ranks of half-step void god realms. Zhao Feng. Shi Qingtian came over with his father, Shi Yuntian, and expressed his gratitude. If it wasn't for Zhao Feng, the Shi family would probably be dead. The Mystic Sword Sovereign and the other experts of the Sacred Alliance had complex and wary expressions. Zhao Feng's goal was to take over the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. If he succeeded, would he become the second patriarch of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion and bring disaster to the continent? Zhao Feng, the entire continent is attacking the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Aren't you afraid of raising a tiger? Why don't you team up with the Sacred Alliance and destroy the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? The Mystic Sword Sovereign suggested. I've already given the Scarlet Moon demonic religion to my servant. I'm not interested in anything else. Zhao Feng said. The Mystic Sword Sovereign sighed. After the Sacred True Dragon gathering, he couldn't see through Zhao Feng at all. Zhao Feng understood the situation of the Azure Flower continent from the Mystic Sword Sovereign, Shi Qingtian, and company. The current continent. The Scarlet Moon demonic religion was like a spark that was spreading everywhere. Although the Sacred Alliance and the 10 great sects still had the advantage, they had lost control of the situation. How did the demonic religion recover so quickly? Zhao Feng found a suspicious point. Several hundred years ago, the demonic religion was destroyed and only a few remnants were left. And this isn't because of the Moon Demon Palace's support. Furthermore, the Scarlet Moon Patriarch himself controls the entrance to the Scarlet Moon inheritance and can send a few people in every year. The Mystic Sword Sovereign sighed bitterly. Moon Demon Palace. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. He had interacted with this two-star sect in the Purple Saint Ruins before. After that, Emperor Duanmu had punished the upper echelon of the 3 sects and made them give up on the Purple Saint Ruins. Looks like I need to go to the Moon Demon Palace when I have time. Zhao Feng murmured. Hearing this, the Mystic Sword Sovereign's eyes bulged. From the looks of it, Zhao Feng had interacted with the Moon Demon Palace before and was planning on going there to find someone. Moon Demon Palace. That was a two-star sect. A two-star sect was an existence that the 10 great sects of the Azure Flower continent could only dream of. Of course, if the Mystic Sword Sovereign knew that Zhao Feng had once robbed a two-star battlefield, he wouldn't be so worried. The Emperor of Death, who had been chased by Zhao Feng before, could easily destroy normal two-star sects, but Zhao Feng wasn't afraid. After that, Zhao Feng and Shi Qingtian chatted for a while. Shi Qingtian was full of respect and gratitude towards Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng mainly asked about the other overwhelming prodigies, especially Yu Tianhao's whereabouts. Thinking about it, 7 years had passed since the promise of 10 years with Yu Tianhao. It had been more than 8 years since the sacred True Dragon gathering, and Lu Qinxin had also been separated by more than 8 years. Yu Tianhao doesn't seem to have returned. Shi Qingtian shook his head. Yu Tianhao? It was the Mystic Sword Sovereign who knew a bit. The situation is like this. The Yu clan originated from the legendary Continent Zone. Over the long years, many branch families were scattered across the limitless ocean. The Mystic Sword Sovereign explained. Continent Zone? Zhao Feng couldn't help but be surprised. After the battle 7 years ago, Yu Tianhao left the Azure Flower continent and apparently entered a branch family of the Yu family. That branch family of the Yu family was close to a 2-star power. I heard Yu Xingxin say that Yu Tianhao's bloodline talent is unparalleled and might be sent to the Yu family of the Continent Zone. The Mystic Sword Sovereign said. Zhao Feng roughly understood what was going on. The Yu family should be like the Duanmu family, a force in the Lord dynasty. Duanmu Qing took Zhao Yufei to the Continent Zone to revive the Duanmu family. Continent Zone? In that case, my battle with Yu Tianhao might have to be postponed. Zhao Feng murmured. The promise they had made back then was that they would meet again in 10 years. 10 years later could be 10, 15, or even 20 years. Zhao Feng promised Zhao Yufei and Duanmu Qing that he would go to the Continent Zone after dealing with Lu Qinxin. Zhao Feng didn't stay for long in the Western continent. Skeletal Division Leader, I'll leave the Scarlet Moon religion to you. Before leaving, Zhao Feng handed the 10,000 Ghost Pearl to the Skeletal Division Leader. The 10,000 Ghost Pearl contained 100 cursed ghost corpses as well as several Sovereign Lord ghost corpses. Master, don't worry. The measly Scarlet Moon religion is nothing. The Skeletal Division Leader was full of excitement after taking the 10,000 Ghost Pearl. With the Ghost Cursed Array, even if a king came personally, the enemy wouldn't be able to return. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The Skeletal Division Leader waved its hand, and 10 cursed ghost corpses appeared in front of it. Each of them had an aura comparable to the peak Small Origin Core Realm. Furthermore, these ghost corpses had the power of curses that could threaten Great Origin Core Realm Sovereign Lords. Seeing the 10 peak Small Origin Core Realm ghost corpses, the Batwing King, the Mystic Sword Sovereign, and company couldn't help but hiccup. With such strength, the Batwing King and company didn't doubt that the Skeletal Division Leader had the power to rule the continent. A streak of lightning flashed across the sky. Zhao Feng left by himself and headed toward the northern continent. Zhao Feng had truly given the Skeletal Division Leader the responsibility of taking over the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. It only took 4 hours. Zhao Feng flew from the western continent to the northern continent, and this was only because he controlled his true yuan. Northern continent, Canopy Great Country. A streak of lightning flashed across the sky. Zhao Feng's divine sense scanned across the capital of the Canopy Great Country and the main headquarters of the Iron Blood religion. There were some familiar faces and some new ones in the main headquarters of the Iron Blood religion. In this period of time, Zhao Feng found some scattered forces of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, but he was too lazy to bother with them. His target was the 6 Warlock Tower in the country. However, when he arrived near the Thousand Water River, he paused for a moment. The Thousand Water River was where Zhao Feng was once a chapter leader. Surges of powerful auras gathered in a hidden abyss. Even though they purposely hid their auras, they weren't able to escape Zhao Feng's senses. Recently, the Scarlet Moon demonic religion has been expanding near the Thousand Water River. Apparently, some upper echelon members have arrived and are planning something. We've already found where the demonic religion's stronghold is. Let's catch them off guard. Some of the peak experts of the Canopy Great Country were gathered in the abyss. The weakest amongst them were at the true human rank of the true spirit realm. Zhao Feng's divine sense found the thick-eyebrowed scarlet-haired patriarch Hong and the blood-haired Tiema. Their auras were the strongest. Empress Qin, Flooding Lake City Lord, Tian Yunji, Jiang Sanfeng. Zhao Feng also saw many familiar faces. Amongst them, the Iron Blood religion made up half of them. Patriarch Hong and Tiema, one patriarch and the other patriarch, commanded the 8 forces of the great country. Zhao Feng's divine sense scanned over the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion a few thousand miles away, and his expression changed slightly. Thinking up to here. His figure flashed and he entered the hidden abyss. The arrays around the abyss were useless against him. At this point in time, the secret plan of the Iron Blood religion had come to an end. Inside a stone house that was temporarily cut open. This stronghold doesn't seem simple. We should. Under the candlelight, Patriarch Hong and Tiema were still planning something. Right at this moment, a figure appeared between the two. Who's there? Cult leader Hong and Tiema cried out involuntarily. They almost jumped up. Chapter 756. Who's there? Patriarch Hong and Tiema broke out in cold sweat. Who in the Azure Flower continent could appear out of nowhere in front of the two giants without them noticing? Under the candlelight, a purple-haired youth with a sickly appearance appeared between the two. Zhao Feng. Patriarch Hong and Tiema acted as if they had seen a ghost. After 7 years, the unparalleled prodigy who had marched into the outer realms had suddenly appeared in front of the two of them, as if he had come back to life. Patriarch Hong, Deputy Patriarch, how have you been? Zhao Feng winked and smiled. He admitted that he was purposely trying to scare the two. Zhao Feng, you've come at the right time. We're lacking heavyweights. Patriarch Hong and Tiema were overjoyed. The two didn't doubt Zhao Feng's strength at all. Just from the fact that he was able to get close to a sovereign without anyone noticing. They could see that Zhao Feng was at least at the origin core realm. Indeed, you've met some trouble. I was preparing to go to the 6 Warlock Tower, but I saw you and the Scarlet Moon demonic religion on the way. Zhao Feng told them the reason. Zhao Feng had left the Scarlet Moon demonic religion to the skeletal division leader. But no matter what, he was the deputy patriarch of the Iron Blood religion and couldn't just ignore it. You've also found that the stronghold isn't normal? Tiema was surprised. There seems to be 2 or 3 auras of the origin core realm. Zhao Feng wasn't sure. He didn't purposely check when he was flying just now. 3 auras of the origin core realm? Patriarch Hong and Tiema looked at each other and took in a cold breath. Sovereigns at the origin core realm were sovereigns in the Azure Flower continent. Patriarch Hong was the only origin core realm expert in the Canopy Great Country. Deputy Patriarch Tiema was at the half-step origin core realm, and his battle power was only close to the origin core realm. Hearing this news, Patriarch Hong and Tiema's expressions became solemn. Ask for reinforcements. The same thought appeared in their minds. The enemy had 3 sovereigns, and their stronghold was immeasurable. This kind of power was probably beyond the scope of a big country to deal with. I have to ask the Sacred Alliance or the 10 Great Sects for help as soon as possible. Cult Master Hong said solemnly. Blood-haired Tiema looked at Zhao Feng with a questioning gaze. He noticed a detail. When Zhao Feng mentioned the 3 venerable ones, he seemed indifferent. Tiema had witnessed Zhao Feng's miraculous rise on the continent. At this moment, his instincts told him that Zhao Feng's strength was immeasurable. There's no need for reinforcements. Since I'm passing by, I'll take care of them along the way and return peace to the country. Zhao Feng shook his head. Deal with it on the way? On the way. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiema could not help but looking at Zhao Feng with a peculiar expression. They thought, what a big tone. Judging from his tone, he seemed to be very casual. Zhao Feng, it's not that I doubt your strength, but you seem to be ill now. Can you really handle 1 or 2 venerables? Hong Jiaozhu said solemnly. 3 origin core realm venerables wasn't a joke. If things went wrong, the Iron Blood religion might be wiped off the continent. Zhao Feng, how can you be so arrogant? Unless you have the battle power of a sovereign lord? Blood-haired Tiama's eyes lit up. He understood Zhao Feng, and he knew that Zhao Feng was not an arrogant person. Though, I'm indeed ill. As for sovereign lords, I've killed some in the outside world. It shouldn't be too difficult. Zhao Feng helplessly shrugged with a bitter expression. Killed a high lord before? Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama's eyes popped out. If it was someone else, they might have thought that Zhao Feng was bluffing. Great. Zhao Feng, we believe you. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama made the decision. Immediately after, the two discussed with Zhao Feng about how to attack and when to attack. How about we attack now? I'm in a hurry to go to the 6 Warlock Divine Tower. Zhao Feng suggested. Now, Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama's faces twitched. It was daytime right now. According to the original plan, the Iron Blood religion would attack at night and catch the Scarlet Moon's stronghold off guard. Now, Zhao Feng's tone was very firm. He paused for a moment before continuing, how about I deal with it myself? Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama looked at each other speechlessly. Zhao Feng really was in a hurry. Fine. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama felt helpless. Immediately, Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama started a meeting and gathered all the peak experts of the Canopy Great Country to discuss. However, a new important figure appeared in this meeting. Zhao Feng, one of the 3 pillars of the Iron Blood religion, Deputy Patriarch Zhao. Him? He is the king of prodigies whose name shakes azure flower. There was an uproar in the meeting. Deputy Patriarch Zhao. Some of them were pleasantly surprised, such as Jiang Sanfeng and the others. They felt a kind of joy and happiness that they hadn't felt in a long time. However, a small number of people had ugly expressions, such as Empress Qin and the head of the Lu family. Feng. The flooding Lake City Lord Lu Jiutian's body shook. He knew that in order to find Lu Qinxin, Zhao Feng had ignored the Iron Blood religion's objections and rejected the chance to join a 2-star sect. In the blink of an eye, more than 7 years had passed. There had been no news of Zhao Feng in the past few years. A true Lord-rank genius entering the limitless ocean was obviously filled with danger. City Lord Lu. Zhao Feng went up and talked to the flooding Lake City Lord. Seeing the flooding Lake City Lord stop, Zhao Feng obviously knew what he wanted to ask. I found some clues about Qinxin's whereabouts. After we finish off the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion, I'll go to the 6 Warlock Divine Tower with City Lord Lu. Zhao Feng explained. Okay. The flooding Lake City Lord was overjoyed. He didn't think that Zhao Feng would find Qinxin's whereabouts in the limitless ocean. The main point of the meeting was to attack the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion. Hearing that they were going to attack the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion, the crowd broke into chaos. It wasn't hard for them to guess. All of this was caused by Zhao Feng's arrival. Zhao Feng's every action was watched. The peak experts of the great country couldn't see through him at all. However, they guessed that Zhao Feng was most likely at the Origin Core realm or even the battle power of a sovereign lord. Otherwise, the Iron Blood religion wouldn't have the confidence to attack the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion. What they didn't know was that the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion had at least 3 Origin Core realms, so they soon came to an agreement. So, the experts in the abyss all flew into the air. Some of them rode flying beasts. For hours later, the group of experts from the big country arrived at a bay with complicated terrain, near a hidden waterfall in the area of the bay. Humph, a mere exalted dares to brazenly attack our secret stronghold? In front of the waterfall, a tall and skinny elder with blood-colored hair and robes stood with his hands behind his back as he looked into the sky. They definitely wouldn't expect Elder Shueli to come to the Canopy Great Country with 2 other Origin Core realms. We don't have to use baiting anymore. A fatty in golden robes at the half-step Origin Core realm said respectfully. In just a moment, the bloodthirsty auras of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion appeared in front of the waterfall. Apart from that, on the other side of the waterfall was a mysterious elder in a blood-colored moon robe and a beautiful girl in a faint red dress. The beautiful girl could be said to be a peerless beauty. Her pair of snow-white and delicate legs that were tender like jade and her warm red and translucent shoulders were half exposed to the air. Every frown and smile of hers was filled with a type of lethal charm, and she was like a lotus in a valley that bloomed with a mysterious radiance. There was a dark crescent mark on the girl's forehead, and her purple hair blew in the wind, making her seem like a fairy. Even some of the males in front of the waterfall were attracted by the mysterious aura of the girl and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. However, facing the mysterious elder and the beautiful girl, everyone's eyes were filled with respect. Even Elder Shueli's tone was very polite to them. So. Right at this moment in time, the sound of flying came from the sky. The experts and elites of the Canopy Great Country led by the Iron Blood religion killed their way to the waterfall. Surround them. Kill the remnants of the demonic religion. The experts and elites of the Canopy Great Country had the advantage in numbers, and they instantly surrounded the area. In front of the waterfall, a faint mocking smile appeared at the corner of Elder Shueli's mouth. The mysterious elder and the beautiful girl both had playfulness in their eyes. In this massacre, who was the prey and who was the hunter? Patriarch Hong, you're walking into a trap. The Iron Blood religion will be removed from the continent. Elder Shueli roared as his hair blew in the wind. In an instant, the aura of a late-stage small origin core realm dyed the air red. It's Elder Shueli of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. He's extremely bloodthirsty. The expressions of the upper echelon of the Canopy Great Country changed dramatically. An elder was definitely an upper echelon member of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Kill all the elites of the Canopy Great Country. The Scarlet Moon demonic religion will gain a stable footing in the northern continent. A mysterious elder wearing a blood-colored moon robe suddenly appeared in the clouds. He slowly raised his hand, and a giant blood-colored moon with a diameter of 100 yards merged into the air. The light from the blood-colored moon formed a barrier that covered everything within 10 to 20 miles. It was as if the sky had been replaced. The experts of both sides fell into a blood-colored moon in the sky. Could it be a sovereign lord at the Great Origin Core realm? Patriarch Hong and Tiamat both felt uneasy. This was only the two powerhouses. The other three heavens of the true spirit realm felt their true force being restricted by an invisible force. What's going on? My energy and true force are becoming stronger. On the other hand, the members of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion glowed, and their auras and strength rose dramatically. Let the game begin. The mysterious elder in the blood-colored moon robe maintained the giant blood-colored moon in his hand. Right at this moment, enveloped by the light of the blood moon, Elder Shueli, whose combat strength had been amplified, let out a long howl and charged toward Cult Master Hong. Boom! In just the first clash, Patriarch Hong was pushed back, and his blood boiled. Elder Shueli was an expert of the blood demonic Tao, and his battle power increased the most in the blood-colored moon. The hearts of the experts of the Canopy Great Country went cold, and they all felt danger. Empress Qin and company instinctively looked back and tried to find a way to escape. Not a single one of you can leave. The mysterious girl in a light red dress blocked everyone's path. Origin Core Realm. Such a young Origin Core Realm. Empress Qin and company felt the aura of a sovereign and couldn't help but tremble. The experts from the Canopy Great Country were filled with despair. They didn't expect a mere stronghold to have three sovereigns. One of them seemed to be a sovereign lord at the Great Origin Core Realm. Zhao Feng, the blood-haired Tiamat exclaimed. The situation was becoming dangerous. However, the purple-haired youth in the crowd stared at the beautiful girl and said, Zhuang Wanu. Chapter 757. Zhuang Wanu. This beautiful girl was a core disciple of the Moon Demon Palace, and she was on par with Yenyu of the Pure Moon spiritual sect. After so many years, Zhuang Wan had broken through to the Origin Core realm. This time, she had come to the Azure Flower continent with an elder of the sect to reinforce the Scarlet Moon demonic cult. It was a sect mission. Hearing someone call her name, Zhuang Wan paused and looked toward a purple-haired youth in the crowd. After so many years, Zhao Feng's appearance and aura had changed greatly. This was especially so when he looked slightly sick. It's you. A trace of indescribable panic appeared on Zhuang Wan's peerlessly beautiful face. That kind of fear, like a conditioned reflex, originated from a scene that was deeply engraved in his memory. In the past, Zhao Feng had comprehended the void space / in the Purple Saint ruins and killed everyone like a god of death. Lu Tianyi, Elder Shui Yun, Grandmaster Yin Kong, and company had all died in that nightmarish memory. At this moment, the nightmare in her memory seemed to be right in front of her. The purple-haired youth was looking at her with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. Zhao Feng? Why is he here? Zhuang Wan's face was pale white and filled with fear. At this moment, she only had one thought left in her mind: run. In the past, Zhao Feng's void space / could create a massacre in the Purple Saint ruins. After so many years, she couldn't estimate how much Zhao Feng had improved. Elder Wu. Retreat. Zhuang Wan quickly sent a message and flew into the air to meet up with the mysterious elder in the Blood Moon robe. What's going on? The Blood Moon elder was stunned. He had never seen Zhuang Wan in such panic and fear. This scene caught the attention of Elder Shueli and company. A prodigy at the Sovereign Lord level was frightened by the name of Zhao Feng. Hee, you wanna run? Zhao Feng laughed mockingly and arrived in front of the Blood Moon elder in a single step, blocking Zhuang Wan's path. He was just about to find trouble with the Moon Demon Palace, but he didn't expect to meet it so soon. Who are you? The Blood Moon elder's face was grave. Every action of the young man before him carried an invisible will that exerted great pressure on him. He had only felt a similar feeling from the Moon Demon Palace's Grand Elder. But Zhao Feng slowly reached out and pressed on Zhuang Wan's half-exposed shoulder. Just the aura of his bloodline and physique was enough to seal her true essence and bloodline. You? Zhuang Wan's face alternated between red and white. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and she didn't even have the slightest strength to resist. The young man in his vision overlapped with the nightmare in his memory. Stuff. The Blood Moon elder shouted in shock. The mighty aura of a supremacy changed the environment of this area. Below, the great country and Scarlet Moon religion that had just clashed felt an indescribable pressure, making it hard for them to breathe. Supremacy? Cult Master Hong and Elder Shueli also stopped fighting. Cult Master Hong and Tianma were pleasantly surprised. Zhao Feng had just appeared, and he scared a supremacy out of his wits. With one hand, he controlled a supremacy and caused the Blood Moon elder, who was a supremacy, to pale. At this moment, facing the Blood Moon elder, who was a supremacy, Zhao Feng only snorted coldly. In an instant, an invisible force of heaven and earth enveloped the Blood Moon elder's body. What? The Blood Moon elder spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt that all the true essence in his body was sealed, and he couldn't even think. You are actually... The Blood Moon elder's face was filled with shock. The fear on his face was even stronger than Zhuang Wan's. There was even more disbelief on his face. What's going on? The elites of Canopy Great Country and Scarlet Moon religion were slightly dumbfounded. Zhao Feng didn't even make a move. He only snorted, and the Blood Moon elder, who was a supremacy, spat out blood. The invisible force of heaven and earth only existed in a small area. Zhao Feng didn't do this because he didn't want to use his soul too much. Instead, he relied more on his intent and soul usage. Although he was hit by the cursed words of death, the intent he comprehended wouldn't disappear or weaken. It was like how the child demigod's intent was extremely high. The negative effects of the cursed words of death were lifespan and life force, followed by true essence, soul, bloodline, and body. The slowest was the Emperor's intent. Intent itself was the condensed intent, and it was built on the foundation of soul power. How is this possible? Zhuang Wan was very close, and she could feel the Void God Realm magnificent power from Zhao Feng's body. That brat is strange. Run. Elder Shueli felt a strong sense of uneasiness. Even an elder of the Moon Demon Palace couldn't fight back against Zhao Feng. He turned into a streak of blood-colored light and flew into the depths of the bay. Zhao Feng glanced in Elder Shueli's direction. Boom! An intent that seemed to pierce through heaven and earth landed on Elder Schweli like a bolt of lightning. Elder Schweli screamed as his soul instantly dissipated, and he fell from the sky. Plop. Elder Schweli's corpse fell into the forest below. This scene caused both sides to tremble, and the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's hairs to stand on end. He killed a sovereign with just one thought. Patriarch Hong, Tiamat, and company were all dazed. There was probably no one in the entire continent who could do this. Even the patriarch of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion wouldn't be able to do this unless he became a Void God Realm King. Could it be? Patriarch Hong and Tiamat looked at each other and had an unimaginable guess. Lord King, we were ignorant. Please forgive us. The elder of the Blood Moon demonic religion said in a trembling voice. Zhuang Wan didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The nightmare in her memory had risen to an unparalleled level. Void God Realm King. This was an existence that stood at the top of the pyramid in the Tsang Ocean. In the Azure Flower continent, Void God Realm Kings only existed in legends. King Zhao Feng has reached the level of a king. No wonder Patriarch Zhao was able to kill an elder of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion with just one thought. The Canopy Great Country was in an uproar. Cult leader Hong and Tiamat looked at each other. Both of their eyes were filled with astonishment as well as ecstasy. One had to know that there wasn't a single Void God Realm King in the entire Azure Flower continent. However, the Iron Blood religion had given birth to a Void God Realm King. What kind of honor was this? Patriarch Hong and Tiamat couldn't help but feel lucky that they had put Zhao Feng in such an important position. The birth of a king was enough to change the situation of the continent, and it wasn't something that could be stopped. Empress Qin was dazed as if she were in a dream. The elite instructors of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion fell into despair. Under the gaze of a king, they didn't even have the courage to run. Elder Schweli was a living example. Lord King, what do you want? You can tell me your conditions. The Elder Blood Moon said bitterly. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng had already retracted his Void God Realm magnificent power. However, even then, the Elder Blood Moon and Zhuang Wan didn't dare to have any thoughts. Zhuang Wan, stay behind. Go back to the Moon Demon Palace and tell them that if they don't give me an explanation within 100 days, I will kill her and remove the Moon Demon Palace from the Tsang Ocean. Zhao Feng slowly said. Hearing this, the Elder Blood Moon's heart shook. This was especially so when the Moon Demon Palace's name was removed from the Ash-Gray Sea. Facing Zhao Feng's cold and decisive voice, the Elder Blood Moon felt that it was absurd. He didn't dare to doubt that Zhao Feng had the ability to do so. In reality, with Zhao Feng's strength, it wouldn't be hard for him to destroy the Moon Demon Palace even if he fell below the Void God realm. This was because his intent wouldn't disappear, and the weakening of Emperor intent would be slower. Furthermore, Zhao Feng estimated that it would take at least 1 or 2 months for it to fall below the Void God realm. After all, there was a huge gap between the Void God realm and the Origin Core realm. I'll go right now. I hope that Lord King won't harm one. The Elder Blood Moon took a deep breath. He knew that he had no bargaining power in front of a Void God Realm King. Whoosh! The Elder turned into a streak of blood-colored light and flew toward the limitless ocean. Zhuang Wan-er's face was pale white, and she felt helpless. She couldn't predict what kind of future awaited her. However, she knew that her life would fall into the game between Void God Realm Kings. Next, the elites of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion either died or surrendered. A battle that could have been earth-shattering was stopped with a thought from a king. Zhao Feng wasn't interested in dealing with the aftermath. My strength has dropped. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh. Although he still had the battle power of an emperor, his soul, true yuan, and bloodline had all weakened. Hearing that, the faces of Patriarch Hong, Tiamat, and company couldn't help but twitch. Zhuang Wan was even more bitter and speechless, too ashamed to show her face. As it turned out, Zhao Feng wasn't even at his peak state. Zhao Feng couldn't be bothered to explain. The weakening of his strength made him understand the purpose of this trip to the Azure Flower continent. Immediately, Zhao Feng bid farewell to Patriarch Hong and Tiamat. City Lord Lu. Zhao Feng's gaze landed on the flooding Lake City Lord as he took him and Zhuang Wan in the direction of the 6 Warlock Divine Tower. Along the way Zhuang Wan acted as the coolie. She summoned her flying spirit pet to carry them. The flooding Lake City Lord looked at Zhao Feng with a complicated gaze. He never would have thought that the azure-haired brat that he had forced to marry back then had already become a legendary king. This made him feel even more hopeful about Lu Qinxin's whereabouts. Several hours later, in the depths of the mountain, a pitch-black hexagonal tower appeared. When Zhao Feng arrived, on the 49th floor of the 6 Warlock Divine Tower stood an elder that was as silent as the night. Meow. A silver-black lazy cat appeared on the edge of the tower and looked at a black cat that was becoming bigger and bigger. "The guest is here." The sage slowly spoke, as if he had been waiting here for a long time. At the same time, a flying spiritual pet landed below the 6 Warlock Divine Tower. "You stay here," Zhao Feng ordered and told Zhuang Wan to wait below. Zhuang Wan felt humiliated. She was a genius at the Origin Core realm, but she was like a driver or a guard. In reality, Zhao Feng just didn't want Zhuang Wan to know some secrets about him. "Sir, please." A female priest of the 6 Warlock Divine Tower respectfully invited Zhao Feng up. "Meow meow. Meow meow." On the 49th floor of the tower, the little thieving cat and the lazy cat harumphed coldly. The sage's turbid eyes flashed when they landed on Zhao Feng, and for the first time, a hint of shock appeared in them. The sage's voice was slightly hoarse as he said word by word. Chapter 758. Zhao Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. Ever since the pursuit of death, this was the first person who could see the cursed words of death on him. Moreover, he recognized her at first glance. Zhao Feng couldn't help but feel a little hopeful. He really didn't find the wrong person. Clearly, the sage had a certain understanding of the cursed words of death. However, the sage's expression turned grave when he read the words, "cursed words of death." "Wise man, you seem to know a little about the cursed words of death?" Zhao Feng could not help but ask. The sage pondered for a moment as if he was thinking about something. After a long while, his murky eyes looked toward the sky. "The cursed words of death originates from the ancient witch race, which is ranked second among the 10,000 ancient races. The price of using this forbidden technique is death. The stronger the host, the stronger the power. In the immemorial era, the ancient witch race used the language of death. Even the immemorial gods and legendary races of the 10,000 races couldn't survive." When Zhao Feng heard this, he was shocked. This cursed words of death was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Even the ancient gods and the legendary races of the 10,000 races couldn't escape. No wonder his profound ice-scaled race bloodline and body were slowly deteriorating and couldn't be stopped. In the current fan universe, the ancient shaman race is basically extinct. However, in the future, there are still some people who have studied the secret arts of the soul path to the extreme and can use this art. Perhaps their power is far from the ancient shaman races, but it is not to be underestimated. At this point, the 6 Warlock sage curiously looked at Zhao Feng. "That person is the Emperor of Death," Zhao Feng said seriously. "It really is the Emperor of Death. His mastery of the Soul Tao has reached the peak of the Ash Ocean. More importantly, the Eye of Death is a soul-type bloodline inheritance of the 8 great god eyes. It is a powerful medium for the cursed words of death." The sage heaved a sigh. Zhao Feng couldn't help but admit that the Emperor of Death's mastery in the Tao of the Soul was more than a level higher than his. It was a pity. He met Zhao Feng's god spiritual eye, a god eye level bloodline, and was completely countered. Otherwise, none of the martial monarchs in the Zhongxi could defeat the Death Emperor, let alone chase him to such a miserable state. Even a sacred lord didn't want to provoke the Emperor of Death. In that case, may I ask the Wise One if there is any way to dispel the cursed words of death? Zhao Feng's heart tightened. There are some methods, but most of them are extremely harsh. The sage hesitated for a moment. Zhao Feng couldn't help but listen attentively. He did not expect the sage to be able to resolve his cursed words of death when he sought him out. However, the sage of the six warlock was known to be knowledgeable and farsighted. He had many inheritances of the path of fate, the path of music, the path of charm, and many others. Zhao Feng was only hoping that the six warlock divine sage would be able to give him some inspiration and methods. The first method is to find the eyes of samsara. These god-eye bloodlines can counter the cursed words of death to a certain degree. Eyes of samsara, one of the 8 great god-eye inheritances. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. At the very least, there was something in this world that could counter the cursed words of death. However, only the inheritors of the Eyes of Death and the Eyes of Destiny had appeared in the Zhangxi. The Eyes of Samsara had never appeared before. It was said that the Eyes of Samsara were the rarest of the 8 great god-eye inheritances. The second method is that everything in the world is balanced. If there is a cursed words of death, then there is also a blessing of death. The 6 warlock divine sage gave a faint smile. Blessing of death? Zhao Feng was instantly stunned, and he said with joy, the blessing of death and the cursed words of death are like fire and water, life and death. That's right. The 6 warlock divine sage nodded. The blessing of death was the most direct method to dissolve the cursed words of death. However, the principle behind the blessing of death is the same as the cursed words of death. They are both witchcraft of death. The words of death are naturally activated after death. The 6 warlock divine sage shook his head. Zhao Feng understood, but he shook his head bitterly. Using the blessing of death required the user's death as the foundation. It was for this reason that the words of death were so heaven-defying. In other words, the user had to be as skilled in the soul as the Emperor of Death, or even stronger, and the host had to be no weaker than an Emperor or the Eye of Death. Only by using death as the foundation could the blessing of death be used to dissolve the Zhao clan's curse on Zhao Feng's body. This condition was extremely harsh. It would be hard to find a single person in the entire Zhangxi that fulfilled this condition. Even if there was such a person, who would be willing to sacrifice themselves to use the blessing of death. The third method is the cicada shedding technique. This is the method that this old man has thought of. It might work against you. The 6 warlock divine sage inspected Zhao Feng. Hope reignited in Zhao Feng's eyes. The cicada shedding technique requires a forbidden part of your body that can be isolated from the cursed words of death. The 6 warlock divine sage explained. A forbidden part? Zhao Feng suddenly understood the principle behind the cicada shedding technique. He did have a forbidden part on his body. His god's spiritual eye wasn't affected by the curse of death. Only his soul and eye bloodline power had weakened. The god's spiritual eye's blue lake in the center was a forbidden part of the ancient dream realm. Apart from that, the part of Zhao Feng's soul that absorbed God Tribulation Lightning could also block out the cursed words of death. Let your forbidden part be reborn while the rest of your body dies under the words of death. This is the cicada shedding technique. Very few people can use this method. I believe that with the 9th God's Eye, you can try it. The 6 warlock divine sage smiled and said, these were the 6 warlock divine sage's 3 methods. The first 2 required external help, while the third method could be tried by Zhao Feng himself. The third method can be used as a reference by the Emperor of Death and use the Eye of Death to recultivate. But this method is too dangerous, and it will give up one's body, bloodline, and cultivation. Zhao Feng sighed. The most ideal method was the second one, the blessing of the words of death. This method was more targeted and the most thorough. But correspondingly, the conditions required for this method were also the harshest. But no matter what, Zhao Feng now had a clear idea of how to resolve the cursed words of death, and he was no longer clueless. Thank you for your advice. Zhao Feng was grateful. Anyone else would find it very difficult to resolve the cursed words of death so comprehensive. Little friend is too serious. The 6 warlock divine sage bitterly shook his head. You are the 9th God's Eye's limitless potential. If it weren't for you, Qinxin would have died before she was 16. Qinxin? Zhao Feng and the flooding Lake City Lord understood the other goal of this trip to the 6 warlock divine tower. Immediately, Zhao Feng told the 6 warlock divine sage about what happened in the Fanluan ancient sound palace. If this old man's speculations are correct, Qinshin has been reborn for 8 years. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage revealed a gratified expression. Hearing this, Zhao Feng faintly understood what this rebirth was about. You have probably seen people who use this method of rebirth before, but that person was unable to experience the glory of the Fanluan ancient sound and change fate like Qinshin. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage's tone was slightly mysterious. He had met that person before? But Zhao Feng couldn't remember. Wise one, are you able to tell me exactly where Qinshin is? The Flooding Lake City Lord couldn't help but ask. Zhao Feng also wanted to know where Qinshin was. Zhao Feng, if you are still fated, you will see Qinshin again. If you want to know where she is, you will need to find the Eye of Samsara. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage's eyes were filled with a smile. Zhao Feng felt like the 6 Warlock Divine Sage knew more but wasn't willing to tell him. Another Eye of Samsara? Zhao Feng couldn't help but be speechless when he thought about this inheritance of one of the 8 great god eyes. The Eyes of Samsara once appeared in the continent zone 10,000 years ago, but it was only for a brief moment, and the dragon's head was never seen. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage said. The continent zone? Zhao Feng murmured. He knew that this was a place he had to go. On the 6 Warlock Divine Tower, Zhao Feng was dazed for a moment, but he didn't disturb the 6 Warlock Divine Sage and left. He felt that the 6 Warlock Divine Sage was filled with many mysteries that he still couldn't see through. On the 49th floor of the tower, the 6 Warlock Divine Sage sent off Zhao Feng with his eyes. Meow. The big lazy cat gave a long and lazy cry. Little Qinghua continent has such a large source of providence, but this isn't the center of fate. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage murmured. On the same day, the 6 Warlock Divine Tower disbanded and left with the big lazy cat. From then on, the 6 Warlock Divine Sage became a legend in the Azure Flower continent, and he never came back. However, his mysterious aura left a mark in the history of the Azure Flower continent. Coincidentally, half a month after the 6 Warlock Divine Sage left, an elder of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion led a large group of elites toward the 6 Warlock Divine Tower, but they missed. As expected of the 6 Warlock Divine Sage. I was ordered by Patriarch Feng to capture him alive, but the Scarlet Moon Elder stood on the 6 Warlock Divine Tower for a long time before leaving. But then, this group of Scarlet Moon elites was only several hundred miles away. A bright orange light came from the direction of the limitless ocean, and the powerful aura it radiated made everyone feel suffocated. The newcomer was a black-haired youth with eyes as deep as the dark sky. His every action was filled with a will that looked down on the world, giving others a sense of pressure. Who's there? The Scarlet Moon Elder met the black-haired youth as soon as he flew a certain distance away. This person looks familiar. It's him. Yu Tianhao. One of the overwhelming prodigies from the last sacred True Dragon gathering. A few of the Red Moon elites let out a low cry. Remnant of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Then let's take care of him on the way. Yu Tianhao smiled faintly and slowly raised his palm. A brilliant orange light, like the blazing sun of the Golden Crow, instantly engulfed everything within a few miles. Dozens of elites, including the Red Moon Elder, were instantly burned and melted in the orange light, turning into ashes. In just one move, he had killed a sovereign and many experts of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Zhao Feng, I seem to feel your aura. Yu Tianhao stood still as his black hair blew in the wind. His battle intent came from the unparalleled heaven-battling bloodline. He looked in a certain direction. If he followed that direction, he would reach a remote area of the northern continent, the Cloud area. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng was already in the 13 countries. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.